Okie dokie, we're back. I got my trusty guitar, and we can just strum along. Welcome in, people. Just playing some guitar, waiting for people to come up and chit chat. The topic today is, what's been on your mind lately? Should I sing? I don't know if you want to hear me sing. Another turning point, a fork struck in the road. I don't even know the lyrics either. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. Don't make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end you tried. I hope you had the time of your life. I don't even know the lyrics. All right, that was some Green Day. There is 4 people. Holy moly! The topic today is what's been on your mind lately. I'm hoping to have some good dialogues with people, or I can just keep playing my guitar for a bit. Unless, how do babies know not to say the word "say"? When asked to say "mom" or "dad," they never say "say." Say "mommy," say "mommy," say. I like that. That's good. My life is about over, and I'm about to take hey there, hey, whoa, John Robinson, Leather. I hope no. I'm sorry for one. I'm sorry that you're feeling that way. But I highly recommend talking to a professional or calling a hotline, just to get you the professional help that you need. Because there's always a way. There is always a way. By the way means by the way. Oh, you're singing to my song. Nice. If anyone got requests, we can do that too. But I'd rather just talk with some people, and go from there. I'll do a finger style. Finger style. Finger style. Someday, my baby, when I am a man, and others have taught me the best that they can, they'll sell me a suit, cut off my hair, and send me to work in tall buildings. So it's goodbye to the sunshine, goodbye to the dew, and goodbye to flowers, and goodbye to you. I'm off to the subway, I must not be late. I'm going to work in tall buildings. All right, that was In Tall Buildings by John Hartford. Hartford. Um, with a cover by Gregory Alan Isaacoff, and I sing the Gregory Alan Isaacoff. Jesus. Oh, we had someone request up, but I lost them. Dang it. We do song requests. I can look up any song if I know it, and I can try my best to sing a little bit. Good evening, sir. I'm trying to get 200 followers. Good luck, Wilford. I believe in you. Yo, do you like motorsports? I don't dislike motorsports. I don't know much about them, but I think it's pretty decent. Pretty cool what people can do. Hey, it's 3:13. My engine on my Silverado is severely overheated and my drive shaft snapped. Am I cooked or not? That sounds pricey. The drive shaft? I don't even know what that is, but I'm assuming it does something with driving. Sorry, that's my consensus of with it. I hope you can get that fixed relatively cheaply, but I don't know. It doesn't sound cheap. I'm sorry about that. El Cabronito. But yeah, guys, the topic is what's been on your mind lately. You can request in with the pink and the blue people on the bottom, or I can find you in the comments if you want to chat to bring you up. We can do either, or we can just keep singing and playing guitar. Either one works. But I'll do this song next. This is Romance. Cool, and that was a little bit of it. There's another part that I'm not super well at, but I can try it. I don't know. We won't. I can try it. There we go. Okay. Did have my mic pointed at to that. How can no longer remember some people who have passed in my life? How can I no longer remember? I'm sorry that you're having that difficulty. That must be hard to not remember. And it seems like there's a lot of people that had passed if that's the case. I don't think that's a bad thing. Nah, that was on my mind, brother. Happy Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. Brother all love. Hey, yeah. I didn't even know it was Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. That's amazing. Let's point this bad boy down. The forbidden song? Can we play the forbidden song? Come on, guys. Okay. Alright. You guys asked for it. Alright, here we go. And that's how that one goes. There's a lady, I'm sure. All that glitters is gold, and she's buying the stairway to heaven. And then the solo. If I had my electric guitar out, we could do the solo, but we can try a little bit. Fuck, I haven't played this for a while. And then we're gonna stop there because it sounds like shit on acoustic guitar doing those bends. So, and I'm not super skilled with playing solos like that on the acoustic guitar. But yeah, how many people asked for Wonderwall? No one, Sub-Zero. You're the first one. You're the first one. I think it goes something like this. Does it? How does the song even go again? Wonderwall. Wonderwall. How does that song go? How does Wonderwall even go in the first place? I'm drawing a blank. You're my Wonderwall. Okay, here we go. I don't know. I think it's just a basic. There's basic chords to it. I guess we can do it. Why not? Let me just get to Wonderwall. Boom, 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 boom. That was a capo on the second fret. I didn't know about that. Okay, there's a capo on the second fret. Everyone. E minor, G, D. Oh, that's it. This is seriously. God damn it, guys. Today is gonna be the day, but they'll never look back to you. Oh, the singing. By now, you should have somehow realized what you gotta do. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. And we'll keep going. Back deep, the wood is on the street, that the fire in your heart is out. I'm sure you've heard it all before, but you never even had a doubt. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. And all the roads we have to walk are winding, and all the lights that lead us there are blinding. There are many things that I would like to say to you, but I don't know how. Shit. God damn it, this is so long. 'Cause maybe you're gonna be the one that saves me. And after all, you're my Wonderwall. And that's all we're gonna do. That's all we're gonna do. Holy shit. And we got 4 people watching. Oh my god, I'm sorry about that. I hope your ears are not bleeding right now. What do you mean by request to chat? So can I talk about something that's been on my mind? Yeah, if you want to request up, we can chat about it. You can press the blue and the red people on the bottom to request up. Oh, someone requested up. Okay, we got Big Mac, and they left. Dang it. I'm sorry. I'm just entertaining people right now with my guitar to wait for someone to come up. I do not claim to be the best singer, but I can sing. And I can play guitar, so that's what we're doing until someone comes up. I had a friend. Okay, oh yes, it's such a meme now. I had a friend that would say, "Okay, here's Wonderwall," and play a completely different song. Nice, heck yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I can't. I'm in a spot where it's super loud. That's okay. I You can talk in the chat. Yeah, you're more than welcome to talk in the chat. Um, yeah, we can do that. Um, let's put this on Brady. Okay, here we go. Capo first fret, they say. All right. Oh, moon, full moon, won't you come home soon? For the night is so dark and the stars are so lonesome without you. Full moon, shed your light on the room. For the night's almost over, the sun will be coming up soon. We're gonna scroll. Oh, moon. Lit by the night of the night. Oh, lit by the light of the night. Lit by the light of the night. Oh, full moon. And that was Full Moon song by Camp, which I'm seeing them in August, and I'm super excited. Super, super excited. I can't do this shit anymore. Life is too much. Hey, I'm sorry to hear about that. What's going on? I'm sorry. Gonna get some agua. Some agua. Man. Boys and stuff at home. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That can be difficult when the home environment doesn't feel safe and it feels like you're walking on eggshells. I don't know if that's how it feels, but where it just feels off. And you just can't be without being. I don't know if that makes any sense. But I used to have a similar situation at home, so I'm sorry to hear that. Hello, Denki Kiminra E. Sorry, I totally butchered that. Yes, I know who you are. Hey, also, you said you're 19, and you're definitely not 19. So I'm like, dude, don't lie. It's TikTok terms of service to get people up here. But we did have a good chat, so I did appreciate that. But Phoenix, here we go. Bring the person. Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Oh, there's stuff going on in Iran. There's still operations in Venezuela. I
Right.
mean, there's a lot of other stuff too happening around what people would call the Near East.
Right.
That's kind of how it's going.
I haven't been keeping up too much with it. I've been kind of keeping myself away from politics since the election, which obviously is not a good thing. It's not good to be ignorant. But I don't like. I know there's like some things
Well,
going
I
on with.
understand the stress stuff, and some people will hype stuff up, then just try to get people nervous and invest. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do kind of have good news. Well, I don't know. A lot of things have stalled with the Iranian situation.
Okay.
And the U.S. is kind of on the back foot, and they're like, "Oh, maybe we should, try to be a little bit more open-minded about things and try to hear people out." While they tell, well, certain people will tell the U.S. population, "Oh, we're completely in control. We're big tough guys,"
Yeah.
but it's mostly stalled out. So that's kind of good news.
So it's stalled. So like, but like negotiations aren't being like happening, right? Like I think Trump keeps saying
Yes.
negotiations are going to happen, but they don't come to fruition. So
Well, no, he's kind of opening the door. He's like, "Hey, here, how about?" And then they're like, "Oh yeah, sure." So he makes crazy like ideas like, "Hey, how about you give us all your oil?" and then they say, "Hey, how about you give us Florida?" Like that's not exactly what's happening, but that's kind of like what's going on. So they're technically having negotiations, but they're not quite at the point of settling it. They're kind of like throwing their weight around, saying wild things. You know what I'm saying? But they are actually communicating, which is a good thing.
So, in your opinion, why do you think the war is starting in the first place? Like, why are we engaging in this war?
Well, in a deeply tragic and ironic way, it's about the strait. It's about the resources that Iran has, and when you make Iran not super happy, they shut it down. So they shut down the strait. They shut down their exports of oil. And another reason is too, I guess, kind of like the spurring from a certain group within the region that said, "Oh, they're going to make horrible weapons, and we got to get them." And it kind of harkens back to 2000 when
Right.
the towers were hit, and then we got to go get Iraq. Why do we have to get Iraq? Because they did it. They didn't do it. And then all of a sudden, oil becomes an issue in Iraq
Mm-hmm.
somehow. So it's similar with Iran. And then also in Iraq, they said, "Oh, they're going to have bad things. We got to stop them from having bad things." They never found the bad things of the specific nature that they were trying to describe. What was found was, I guess, a gas that's not good for people, but that was supplied to Iraq by Western forces. So that's a little bit of a catch-22. So obviously they know where to look, and they already knew that that was already there because it hadn't been used enough to be used up within Iraq or within Iraq's conflicts.
Right.
But it's kind of a little bit of a replay of the invasion of Iraq to me.
So, to my understanding, since they were going from what I understood from you and other people, it's like there's a threat there that they're building nuclear weapons. Is that right? And then we wanted to not make that the case, but like also
That's the claim. The claim was that Iraq had them. The claim is that Iran has material to make them and is seeking to make them.
interesting. And yeah, so because of that, we want to eliminate that threat, but also we know at the same time doing that they will close the Strait of Hermandis, or how do you pronounce that?
So Hormuz, yeah. Um,
Hormuz.
I just like to say this. So if you have a big muscular kid on the playground and he's not really hurting anybody, but he could, man. He's a tough guy. He's and so is it a good idea to take a stick and whack him and say, "Hey, don't mess with anybody"? Is that going to make him less aggressive, or what's going to end up happening with that? Do you think?
Right, like escalation, because reaction for reaction, and then who
Right. And that's
happens.
what's happened. And in fact, that entire region has compartmentalized, I guess you could call it defense forces or militaristic forces. And that's how they've gotten stronger. They don't need, WMDs for that type of thing. They've organized in a way that makes them powerful in their region. That's why the Strait of Hormuz is shut down now.
Okay, and Israel is like in this too. Like, how did they get a part? Because like they were doing stuff with Palestine and got the Gaza Strip, and I don't even know much about that, but like they're somehow wrapped up
Yep.
in all this too, which is interesting.
Well, okay, so the term Israel is kind of dishonest, I think, because that implies a nation of Hebrew people. Um, the IDF and IDF controlled territory is populated by Europeans, like people from Poland, who follow the Jewish faith, but they're not Hebrew. And historically, Israel was a group of nomadic people. You know who the Bedouin are, for example, in North Africa.
I've never heard of them.
The
The
Bedouin,
Bedouin.
and most people haven't, but the Bedouin are people who will roam the Sahara. They're wonderful people. They know how to survive with like literally no water, but they ride camels. They know how to collect enough water. Amazing people, the Bedouin.
Mm-hmm.
But for someone to call the Bedouin a nation, it'd be kind of dishonest because they roam through northern Africa, sometimes through Egypt and different regions within the Sahara. And so calling Israel a nation is also kind of dishonest. You see what I'm saying? It's a nomadic group of people. If you read the Bible, it's similar. That's why they're searching for the promised land.
So like not all of them follow the same ideals or like ideas and cultural like
Well,
things
yeah,
like
a
that.
lot of people who are Jewish are anti Zionist. And so they'll say that when you're trying to establish Jerusalem, that will become Zion in the prophecy, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
a city from heaven will descend, and then that will become like a perfect city. That's Zion. So Zionists will try to make this perfect city descend from heaven by having conflicts because that's within the prophecy. There's going to be unities of nations and wars. Anyway,
isn't that kind of problematic in
Anti-Zionists
a
are Jews,
sense? Sorry, go ahead.
very much so. Yes,
Right.
because here's the thing: Zion, it's one, it's not real. You could say that's my opinion, but it's just not. It's not a thing. It's supposed to be in a prophecy, and then we do have the reality of war, conflicts, and so Zionists will have conflicts in the real world for a prophecy that is not real. You see
Okay.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so
Well,
there are
not real,
anti-Zionist Jews.
not really like coming from an outside perspective, being like, this isn't like supporting like.
It's a belief, it's a prophecy, right?
Right.
But it's
Right.
not been fulfilled. But in this prophecy, you have to have war, you have to be horrible to innocent people to fulfill the prophecy. And there are people who are like, well, that's just the prophecy, that's the will of God, and those are the Zionists. It's like,
You have to be
no, how?
bad to innocent people. That's what it says in the prophecy.
Well, it says that you have to annex those lands, and that
Okay.
these lands will unify, um, and they'll basically make armies to try to defend themselves.
Okay.
And so when they see people defending themselves, they say, "Oh, that's part of the prophecy. This is good. We need to keep going further because then by the end of this, there's going to be the battle of apocalypse, and then of course the city of Zion is going to descend from the sky." You've heard of like the rapture, right?
Yes.
A
Yes.
lot of these Zionists are basically trying to make
That
the
happened.
revelation happen. Yeah,
Well, that's
and
problematic. Being like, this is how it's supposed to go, but like, we're just gonna be shitty people just because we want it to go our way. I don't think that's a good way to
it's a
go
big part of
about
it.
things.
Well, and that's why I really think it's important that most Hebrews and a lot of Jews are anti-Zionist. They're saying, they say, listen, if this is the prophecy, it needs to play out as it would be. We cannot be spurring this on because that would be immoral and that would be us trying to play God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. So yeah, you've been educating me and enlightening me about this situation. But what does Israel have to do with Iran?
So yeah, of course, this we have to get back to that. So part of this prophecy is that there would be the establishment within the Promised Land, and then Jerusalem, and then Jerusalem is where Zion is going to come down, and this is in IDF-controlled territory. So you need to realize something: the IDF is not a nation; it is a. Can I? What kinds of terms can I use here?
That's a good question. If you're gonna say something about just murder, you should say like unalive, I think. And then if you say,
Okay, so just use something weird.
yeah,
All right, so
I'll try
they're
to pick it up. I'll try picking up.
yeah, it's fine. So the IDF is a Harrier force, and it's backed by the U.S. and the U.K. And also gets supposed to get reparations from Germany. But a lot of these people came from Europe, from German-controlled territories. And I could get into that, but I'm not gonna. I'd like to say first, I do not do apologetics for the Germans during the Second World War,
Yes, yes.
but yes, there were a lot of expats from Europe who came to the Middle East, and they are Polish, and some of them followed the Jewish faith. Most of them didn't. But then they say, okay, so because I'm Polish and my grandpa was Jewish, that makes me Hebrew. It doesn't make you Hebrew. It means that you had a grandparent who was Jewish. Anyway, so a lot of those expats came to the Middle East, to the nation of Palestine, and then the UK and the US funneled money from Germany for like the reparations, and then the US and UK also funneled this money, and I'll get to why. And then they funded this Harrier force in the region, and it made a network that some people will call a country, but it's never been established as a country. And we can tell this because their quote unquote borders keep on expanding, right? So that's why they're going into Iran. Iran actually has a potential for more defensive capabilities, but the reason is now the US and the UK are backing this Harrier force called the IDF because they want to have Palestine and they want to have Iran annexed and they want to put trade routes through the Middle East. They're trying to remake a modern Silk Road, but it would be in Western control, like the US and UK.
So it's just about
I know
control,
that's
essentially, to
yes.
put resources out there into the world, so people make more money.
Well,
Is that kind
and
of
I don't know if you heard about this, but did you hear about the AI video about what should be done with Palestine, or yeah, Palestine on the Mediterranean because it's
I haven't seen
beautiful
that.
beachfront property. Okay,
Oh wait,
so
yeah,
it
yeah,
there,
no, yeah. Enlighten me,
yeah. So
bro. Yeah,
what
yeah,
was
yeah.
that all about?
Tell
Yeah,
me,
they made
tell
an
me.
AI video, and the reason for that is not. It's actually what they're planning to do if they can pull this off. because then you could make a port there and you could have a lot of wealth from the Mediterranean. And like I said, it would be like the new Silk Road and it would go through Palestine into the Middle East. And
Hmm.
so that would be a massive trade route. Ironically, China is doing stuff like this into like India and Russia. They're building roads where there not been roads before. The difference with China is they're not sending in militaries, they're not sending in proxy forces, and they're not using Harrier forces for this. China is literally just making deals, and when people can't pay them off, they'll say, "Okay, well then we own this land, or you pay us off with this land." Not
Right.
necessarily ethical, but it's much less horrible than actually sending in forces to try to take people down.
Hmm.
But yeah, so that's what the U.S. and the U.K. are essentially trying to do by using the Harrier force that's in Palestine now, and they don't want Iran to be able to go against that, and so that's why they're going against Iran.
So the Harrier force is like the smaller group of people that are like doing harm or like
Well, I say Harrier, but it's spelled Terror or
oh
Terrorist.
yeah, okay,
But they
okay.
do the same thing.
Because
But yes,
like
they do also harry people as well, I guess.
right, because when it goes to the people of Palestine, like I think haven't they like just offed like innocent people, like innocent women and children, or
Consistently. And then they talk about how the IDF is the most moral army, and they're trying to use Judaism to back that. They're not following Judaism.
yeah,
Uh, and the craziest thing is then they say, "Oh well, Muslims they're all nuts." It's like I'm not going to deny that there are Muslims who have done things that aren't really nice, and a lot of other Muslims would say that they're not real Muslims, like how people say you're not a real Christian if you gamble, all this stuff, right?
right.
But with Islam, I actually read the Quran, and I guess what really got to me too was with my involvement with Afghanistan. I was told, well, these people are nuts and they're horrible. I'm like, okay, let me check out the Quran. I read a surah, like a verse. It says that if you end one person, it's as if you've ended the entire world. Very serious. And then it says also, if you save one person, it's as if you saved the entire world.
Hmm.
And that's why a lot of Muslims who actually adhere to the Quran are very hospitable because they think, hey, if I was lost and starving on a journey and someone invited me into the house, fed me, clothed me, all that, then that would be nice. But it's like you flip that around. It's to them, it's even better. It's like saving the entire world. It's like saving every traveler who's hungry.
That's interesting.
So
I kind of like that.
yeah, so not
Reframing
all
that.
Muslims are violent and horrible,
Oh no, yeah, definitely not.
and
I
that's
think I
that's
think
a
just saying
big
that
thing that
any
people are
group is
pushing.
bad. But sorry, go ahead.
Well, it kind of comes down to doctrine, but that's why it gets complicated. But I think the majority of Muslims are pretty decent people. The issue is that there's people who are extreme, and then they're painted like everyone's painted with a broad brush. But a
Right.
lot of people they are so sick of all this, and they're like, I just kind of want to go to the store and come home without getting hit by a JDAM. JDAM is U.S. and British ordnance, joint
Oh.
munitions. Yeah, but they don't want to get hit by that stuff. They just want to go home and come back. They want to play video games. I don't know, whatever they do.
Right. So like, so you just read the Quran out of like just like curiosity, like you don't follow it, you just like wanted to read it. Is that what happened?
Yeah, that's part of it. I had some time. I read the Bible, and then I was getting a lot of rhetoric from Christians, and not all Christians, but some Christians were like, "It's so messed up, it's so bad, and they're all so awful." And I read the Quran. I'm like, "This is very similar to the Bible."
Yeah.
The biggest difference, I guess, so the Bible is kind of broken up into certain books. This doesn't sound weird. I thought of it as a snail though when I read the Quran. And if you ever read the Quran, keep this in mind. The beginning is the largest part,
Hmm.
and then the rest of the parts get smaller, like little sections. So it's like it spirals in on itself, kind of. And that's how I see it. So there's large, and then it gets smaller and smaller. Um, and the Bible has a similarity because the first books of the Bible they're really long. Well, not all of them, but many of them. But then as you get into the New Testament, they get shorter and shorter.
Interesting. Okay.
Anyway, saying that there's a similarity in the Quran, and I read the Quran because I was basically doing religious studies, and I wanted to see if these accusations against Muslims are true.
Hmm.
According to the Quran, they can't be true. And then there's also the issue of the Hadith as well. So
I've heard
you know
about
what a
that.
catechism is? Yeah. So
Catechism
you know what
sounds
catechism
familiar.
is?
Sounds familiar, but you
Okay,
can remind me.
it's in Christianity, usually pretty specific to Catholicism. But we
Okay.
have the Bible, and then you have the Catechism, and the Catechism is supposed to be the hymns and the songs and the types of things that you're supposed
Oh.
to. say
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
go to mass.
Yep.
So the Muslims have the Hadith. You might have the Quran, but then the Hadith is going further about into actions and how a Muslim should behave. And so there's changes to the catechism. Some people will have different catechisms entirely depending on the church.
Hmm.
And then there are people who will have different emphasis in the hadith. And this is where you get extremists, is where they'll find like the smallest example. And the biggest thing that's crazy to me is the term infidel, I guess. Do you know you've heard that before, right?
Infidel. You can remind. It sounds familiar, but it's like someone like does
It's
something bad, right? In some
yeah, I
ways.
guess the term would be kafir, but it's excuse me, the term infidel, it literally means it's an English term or an English anglicized term for infidelity. And so when Allah is seen as God, is seen as like the grace and the wonderfulness of the universe, if you are against the grace and wonderfulness and the power of the universe that is God, then you would become an infidel. Very few people are infidels. Everyone eats, everybody likes to care for each other, and that's someone being considered Muslim or basically following the ideas of Islam,
Right.
is that you want to go with this natural goodness within you, which was given by God. So
Okay.
when people call each other infidels, that's really hard to for someone to meet that bar of accusation because most people tend to have like it's like being infidel or infidelity in a marriage, right? Like yeah, that's much more likely, but the weird irony is it's more likely for me to cheat on my wife because I would want to be with a woman, but that's part of my design by nature, by God, right? Which is why there will be Muslims who will say, hey, that we'll do polytheism because we don't want to be cheating on our wives, we want it to be, they get into like the nitty-gritty of some of that stuff.
Okay.
But for someone to be an infidel, it's very, very like a high bar. It would be like you'd have to be burning down all the trees, you'd have to be polluting all the oceans. So if someone calls another person that, it's really hard to meet that bar. They'd have to be really bad. They'd have to be against nature and God and stuff like that.
Right. When it comes to, like you reminded me where I heard it from is from like cheating on like your spouses or whatever. So like it does
Yep.
sound familiar from that, but I never heard it when it in relation to like God. So that's interesting hearing that. But when it comes to you like comparing like Christianity and is it Islam, right? Is that the right way to say it? Like
Yeah, Islam is like what Muslims follow.
yeah, what do you take away from both of those, and like how do they contradict each other?
Well,
Like
they're the same religion. They both follow the God of Abraham.
yeah.
And so the Christians will just call it God from the European term God. So that actually comes from the Norse, ironically. So they get the gods, and then it comes down to God, which is kind of like what they put over Yahweh, which is what the original Hebrews followed.
Mhm.
And then Islam, it has the final prophet Muhammad says, okay, so the Christ was another wonderful prophet, but I'm the last one, is what Muhammad said. And then he had people write the Quran with his word in it, and then the Muslims follow the Quran, and that's why Muslims will say, "Well, I'm holy or I'm blessed," but they will not say that they are a prophet because Muhammad was the last prophet, so no one else can give prophecy. Big difference in Christianity is you can have prophets in Christianity moving on, and that's why Muslims will a lot of times say, "Hey, we're just going by the straight. We're straight shooters. We're not messing with things. We're not making new prophecies that shouldn't be there." And so sometimes they're not super happy with other people who say they're prophets and other religions like Christianity, because a Christian will say, "I had a prophecy. You all have to give me $1 million." And they'll say, "See, this is the
Ooh.
problem." you know
So
because you run into those and people call themselves prophets. In Islam, that's very, very against what they're for. They're saying nope, Muhammad was the final prophet, and that's that.
are you talking about like mega churches in a sense,
Yeah,
or like
well, and some
because
people
I
there'll be mega churches, mega preachers, but yeah, there's that in Christianity.
yeah, no, I see that to be not good in the case. But do you think that's why like Islam would like say no more prophecies because of that reason, or like what goes into the
That's a big
reason?
part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the Arab world deals with that and has dealt with that. But they're seeing people and they're saying like, you really don't have that divine authority, or you shouldn't claim that you do. And the worst thing, and so you can be a holy person, or you could be on a mission for God or Allah, but to say you're a prophet is even above that. You're saying, I know how fate's going to go, so this is why you guys have to do this. And the
Okay.
problem is, a lot of people will make prophecies and predictions, and it consistently doesn't happen. Which is, interestingly enough, the problem with Zionism. People say, oh, there's so many wars in the Middle East. This is the one. This is the one. This is when the rapture and the battle of apocalypse and Revelations, and then it doesn't happen.
Well, it's been going on
And so
since like
that's
they
why,
written like the prophecies in the first place, right? It's like, okay, here we go. The river's gonna dry up, and we're all fucked.
yeah,
Except the
and
saved,
and
the
that's
saved
what I've
people, right?
that's what I've taken away from it. And this is what I really get about it, the metaphor. And I really feel like if someone masters their understanding of this, and the Christ actually talked about this, he said, "No one will know the day or the hour." And so, what I get from that, and in a weird way, I'll reference Rome for this, but what I get from that is, listen, if you don't know when it's happened, but it might happen within your lifetime, be the best person you can be in your
Yes,
lifetime to make you
yes, you get
worthy
it.
of going to
You get it.
paradise.
You get it. You get it. You
Yeah.
get it.
And that's why no one knows the day or the hour. And then people say, oh, I know the day and the hour, or give me $1 million, buy my bunkers, all that stuff. you
Right.
know,
Like
um,
I think it would please Jesus if like I don't subscribe to Christianity, but I believe the idea of Jesus is true in different ways that people don't reach conclusions to. But anyways, if Jesus could like see us just like becoming better people, like wouldn't that please him more than him coming down and being like, okay guys, half you get to go with me, or however many you get to
so
go, or I don't know how it
I want to
works, but
ask you this about the Christ. So did the Christ say he wanted to be a king at any point in his sermons?
I don't know. I haven't read the
He
whole
didn't.
New Testament.
He okay, so even in his sermon, I think where he gave everyone the bread and the fish, uh, everyone was amazed. He gave that sermon on the mount, and then they said, this guy's hot stuff. Let's get him a crown and let's make him king." He found out about that. The crowd was saying that. He left to the mountains so they wouldn't find him and make him king. But what did his apostles continually call him? They called him rabbi. You know what rabbi means in
I do.
Hebrew?
I've heard of it, but
It
I don't know
means
what it
teacher.
means. Teacher.
It
Okay.
means teacher or
I like that.
priest.
I like that.
And so that's what he wanted to be. And so he kept trying to teach people. But that's why he partially turned down the crown. I think because he saw a lot of problems with, and I'm going off the figure, whether or not that figure was real. I'm saying he was supposed to be a figure for learning. This is a philosopher, which is crazy because a lot of people say, oh, philosophers are so wiffle waffly. It's like, yeah, but also the parables help people learn. You
Right.
know what I mean? And that's kind of what philosophy is about. So with Rome, though, I was going to reference, and this is where the term dictator actually comes from, and it has a better meaning than you might think. There's a point at which, and I have to know the story a little better, but there's a point at which where Rome was a huge mess, and all of the senators, they were like, okay, we need to do something, but all of us are arguing back and forth. We need to put all the power on one man.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they did was they found a gentleman who had served in the military who was plowing his field. And I find this beautiful. And so he had served before in the military, a good general. And so they said, hey, you need to help us. We're in dire straits. So he said, okay, I'll help you guys out. He left his plow in the field. He helped them for years and years. And finally, they got everything straightened out. He had supreme power, though. He took care of everything. No one could really question them, even if they were like another in the Senate and things like that. Then when his time was up, he went right back to the field, to that plow, and continued plowing his field because he realized what his purpose was. He realized that this addiction to power was a poison. He
Right.
just needed to do his purpose and go back to that. And that's kind of why I was thinking about if I could, I might get like a necklace or something with like a plow in a field on like a silver coin or something
Oh yeah.
to remind myself that if I ever have power, I need to fulfill my purpose and then go back to whatever it was I was doing before.
Right. I think that's a really interesting way to like ground yourself and like keep yourself in that state of mind where like you don't like go overboard, right? But I think it's also important to like
Well,
keep like being curious, being open minded, and understanding like within
well,
the
you know what's
situation.
wild about that? What's wild about that to me is that's where we get the term dictator. So dictators are obviously pretty bad, strongman authoritarians, they take away freedoms. But the term dictator came from the Senate, and they had basically all chosen together through type of representative democracy. In the Senate, they said, okay, so now we're going to have him with all the power, and we can't, even if we disagree with him, we have to do what he says. And so he would dictate what they would all do. But he didn't do that against their will. He did it to try to help them. And he became an effective leader. And so that's why I think it's so amazing because it could be a really good thing, but it's framed in a way that's horrible. And
Right.
unfortunately, I think there's a lot of reality to that for people who gain so much power that they can't be questioned.
Right. Like who is this guy again? Like that did this?
I'm not even sure, but if you look up the origin of dictator or the first dictator, It was a gentleman who was plowing his field, and then he helped out the government, and then went back to his field.
I think that's interesting. Like someone that does it like selflessly, like not in a way to like get power or like get control. It's more
Well,
to like harmonize
and I don't
society.
even know if it's selfless. Like he could say, "Well, this is my country. I want my country to do well. This is connected to me." So there could be a lot, connected to himself,
True.
but he's doing it as a responsibility, but not a privilege. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. Like reframing it in that way, I think. But like, who can we find? Like, is that even possible? Like in today's society?
It's absolutely possible.
Okay.
The thing, and you mentioned today's society, we do not glorify duty the way we might have at one point in history. We glorify power, we glorify luxury, and it's very sad to me personally. And people will say, "Oh, I have all this money," and then I keep seeing these people with money. They keep wanting more. But you know what? If I have, let's say a farm and a wife that I love, that would be all that I need, right?
Right.
And for me, it's a weird thing. If I had the access to power, or if someone like me had access to power, I would hope they would use it to just make things sustainable, just make things all right. But there's this whole drama show I think whipped up right now and it really does hurt people. I say drama as if it's just a reality TV show. No, it's really ending people's lives, trying to end nations, you know, cultures, wisdom, even. And this is the thing too. I think back to 1940, and I wonder about a lot of those books that were thrown into the fires by
Right.
the Schmittler youth.
Right. Right. Right.
What was in those books? Because right now we're saying, "Oh, don't read that. That's liberal claptrap, or that's right wing claptrap." I don't care. I want to read it all.
Right. It's trying to control our minds, like what we like, trying to make us not think for ourselves. I think is one thing. Like like defunding the education system is not good. We should strive to be as curious as possible and try to understand our world and ourselves and reality around us. Right. Because I think all of us, in some sort of sense, is like living in different realities. Like we're not fully like in the one
Yeah,
true one.
that
We're not
gets
by any
down
means.
to you've heard of the term postmodernism.
I've heard about it. Jordan Peterson uses it a lot.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll get into it, but yeah. So postmodernism is the idea that we had industrialization, which made the modern world, and modernity, and so our machines and our industry, it makes the modern world and science, and so we have set rules that we can help use with industry, and we can see the world in certain ways. Postmodernism is okay. So now we have such an abundance of all this. How about I say, hey, you need my snake oil, and I am pumping it out of the factory. I say it has a very high vitamin X. It'll make you much stronger. It'll make you live 50 years longer. And people are like, well, how can you say that? Well, it's my truth. It's the truth, of course. It's my science that I'm giving. So it's my truth, my science. It's not the science. So after we've modernized, after we've industrialized, now we have postmodernism.
Okay.
And so this comes up as like, and we have the snake oil salesman. So that's why Peterson will reference postmodernism, and a lot of times he'll imply that it's horrible, but I'm not sure how well he's gotten into why he would feel it's horrible. Because and people do say this so much. They say my truth, and it popped out to me. I think somewhere around maybe 2015 to maybe like 2018, I kept hearing about people saying, well, this is my truth. And at first I'm like, oh, so this is your experience, because it's completely real that a person would have a different perspective or experience. But then we get these narratives of people saying, well, my truth, as if it's universal, because they see it that way, then they can apply that to the entire universe.
Well, I don't know.
And that's what postmodernism really is.
Interesting. Some people that, I mean, saying my truth just might be like their subjective experience. It's like how they have viewed the world in a
And
sense.
that's an important caveat, though, isn't it?
Right. Right. So I think it depends on how the person is using that term in the first place. I've used that. So I'm bipolar one, and I've been in manic episodes since 2022. And my perception of reality shifted so much, where I believed like I was on a Netflix TV show, and I thought, just things led me to different outcomes because of that delusion. And like it's really interesting taking a step back and being stable again, and like being like, whoa, like I can't believe I was that wrong about stuff. Like being wrong is like
And
when,
that's
when I thought it was like
amazing
so
to me,
right.
too.
Right, and it's
Because
some
I've
of
I've made
those.
some changes.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. So I've made some changes here and there, but it's amazing even when I look back at myself and I say, yeah, I like my ability to think. I think I'm, a rational actor. And I look back at some of the things that I've said and done. I'm like, oh my goodness, what was I doing?
Well, that's like
And
growth. That's like showing growth, right? Like I look back on some of my TikToks I've made, like not even like a couple months ago or whatever. I'm like, should I keep this up? It's like it just seems so cringe now to me. I don't make any more videos now because I just don't know what to make. But it's really
if I may,
it's a sign of growth, right? That you can like look back and be like, you know what? Maybe I can like self correct and become a better person tomorrow,
right.
right?
Well, and if I may, Mr. Brady, I would implore you keep this up.
I
Keep
appreciate
keep
it.
up these videos and look back at them and see what you may have gotten correct and what you may disagree with now. Even if it's just your attitude, your background, whatever it is, and this is one of the reasons why I think preserving information, the youth back in Germany, they were burning all those books. They would say, oh, this is cringe. You know what a lot of those books were? They were books on homosexuality,
Mm-hmm.
on
Mm-hmm.
BDSM,
Yep.
right? And they said, oh yeah, no, that's too crazy. We can't allow that. And then, later on, you get this explosion in Germany of people who are into things like that,
Right.
but not many people understand it. And it's like one way or the other, I just think they're people. But the literature on that, it could have been so helpful if Germany during that time was like, oh, this is why they feel this way. Oh, they're not evil or XYZ, whatever's going on. But that understanding in the Weimar Republic was when these books were written was they were afraid of it. They were afraid of this change. They were afraid of understanding these people in their community.
Right, right. And I think the more we are vulnerable with each other and come to be understanding and engaged and not like disengaged, but engage and like we're doing right now, me and you, like we're like aligned, I would say. And then we can like talk about whatever, literally whatever we want. And we have been doing that to where we can progress as humans in the future and be, one. And that's like that's a very like, ambitious goal. I don't know if it's gonna happen in my lifetime, but if I can pave the path and like help people just like articulate like their inner thoughts outwards and externalize them and then be vulnerable, and I think that's doing more good than not, right? Because like modeling these healthy dialogues, I think on TikTok is a good thing. Because like the thing I see a lot on TikTok is like debates or arguments, which can be entertaining and it can be educational. But I think there's a better way to go about it with leading with curiosity, right? And
If I
understanding.
may, my friend, I don't see a lot of these as debates because I don't see points and counterpoints being made. And if it is a point, what it is well, you're silly because we're in a red chair. Well, you're silly because you're in a green chair. Who would sit in a green chair? Well, okay, what does that mean? How does that make anyone right or wrong? You're just insulting each other. And what I'll do in discussions is I might tell someone, yes, I'm in a green chair. However, I do have a certification for data entry. So I feel like I'm still able to talk about data entry. Maybe I'm horrible at choosing chairs because of this ugly green chair. However, I can tell you how to input data into a system and transfer it.
Mm-hmm.
And then people will say, oh, so you just admitted that you have bad taste in chairs. I'm like, yes, but that's not our discussion, is it?
Right.
And
People just want to be
that's
right.
part of what I right. Yeah, and that's what I'll make a concession. I'm fine with that. But I've learned that if you're going to have a discussion or a real debate, you need to be intellectually honest, but also
Yes.
focus on these points.
I think it's good to say I don't know. I think we should normalize saying I don't know, because I've joined a debate and I thought it was like the worst thing possible. Like before even going into it, and it did end up being bad. Um, but like people in those situations don't want to be open to new ideas, and sometimes not all people, but some people on at least on
You know
TikTok.
what? Can I say this? I've found this where I might just say, like, let's say we go to the chair idea, and I say, well, instead of a gray chair, I like this green chair. And they say, oh, well, I got this red chair because I don't like gray chairs either. And then they say, but your green chair, it's horrible and it's closer to gray. And the problem is then I'll say, wait, so maybe you feel green is not appropriate, but we both like colored chairs over green chairs. So it's like we're saying a similar thing in different ways. And I try to say that to people, and
I think
so
that's
often,
interesting.
unfortunately,
That's
well, and so
interesting.
often I get something like this, and they say, "Well, no, you don't understand me at all. We're nothing alike. I am so much better because I have a red chair." And I'm saying, well, okay, would you get a gray chair? Well, of course not. That wouldn't. I hate that. I'm like, well, I don't like gray chairs either. I like a little bit of color in my chairs. I'm like, you
Right.
see how we have that similarity? And honest people will then say, oh, wait a minute, yes, or but dishonest people will say, well, no, 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 and you're trying to get control of the situation. You're trying to trick us, and it's like
Right.
that's that's the weirdest irony for me is a lot of people will bring that up too. Is they'll say you're trying to trick me, and I'll bring up the point that, well, if somebody told you that anyone who has a green chair is akin to having a gray chair or whatever, are they not trying to trick you? Are they not trying to make you biased against people who have the green chairs, and maybe they sell red chairs and get a whole bunch of money off of that? So maybe they've tricked you, you know. And I
Interesting.
found
Yeah.
that's a thing that a lot of people don't realize, but they lean into it, unfortunately.
Right. This is why I think it's fantastic and probably the best idea to become agnostic to like literally every single thing you can possibly imagine again, to like figure it out on your own. Because like people tend to like tell you what you should and shouldn't think, right? And people will latch on to like who they are, put it into their foundation and forget why
Can
it's
I
where
tell
they
you
are in the
something
first
really trippy
place.
for just a second? I
Right.
got to tell you this. I have learned, I think you're correct. I have even become agnostic to agnosticism. So there are some things that
Yes.
I will say, oh, maybe this does have a solid foundation and I can adhere closer to this. I don't usually commit myself, but I'll be like, 99% committed to certain things. But yes, I like your idea so much that I actually try to apply agnosticism to agnosticism.
I like that. It's so explain more. I like to hear how you would like explain
Okay,
that.
so here's the thing. So if somebody actually Zen Buddhism, this was in Japan. So when they went into China, a lot of Zen Buddhists told the Japanese when they were involved in the horrible tragedy at Nanking, they said, okay, no, don't think of yourself as putting your knife into the prisoner. Think of the knife floating in your hand and then going into your prisoner, because that's just how fate works.
Okay.
And so the Japanese were like, oh, okay, I don't have any problem with now doing this to my prisoners. I'm very against that because I think one of my rules, I'm agnostic, I'm open to it. I'm like, well, yes, that may be fate. Here's the thing, I am not open to that because I am going to hold human life and prisoners' lives as very important.
Right.
So
And
I am agnostic. I'm saying, all right, well, maybe I could consider fate that way. However, I am agnostic to the idea of being too open minded where I would do something like that.
right, you have
The term that
values
some people will
and
say,
morals.
right. So that would be something I would kind of lean into, try to anchor myself in. Now, maybe the prisoner is making something horrible that's going to just wipe out the whole prison. Maybe I have to do that to save the other prisoners. I don't know. But there's a phrase, it sounds a little bit like knuckle dragging, but I do use it and I do try to focus on it sometimes. It goes, it's good to be open minded, but don't be so open minded that your brain falls out of your head.
Hmm. I like that. Interesting. So open minded with caution or with some skepticism. Um,
Right. And that's
is
kind of how I try to be agnostic
like
to agnosticism.
obviously like when it comes to me, like if I'm gonna be agnostic to if people should just murder each other, like I understand the value of a human life, so like I can rationally like go through like, or this is a better example. I had this impulse when I was in hypomania or mania that I could gouge out my eyeballs right now. But I'm like, you know what, Brady? Why would this thought come to my mind in the first place? But anyways, let's go through this. Like, hey, if you did that, that'd be unproductive to yourself because you wouldn't be able to work anymore. You couldn't, see things that are beautiful and whatever else. Like, it'd be unproductive to your family and friends because they could be worried. Your coworkers, like you can't work with them anymore. Or perhaps I get stuck in my apartment and I can't find the lock or like the door handle, and I get stuck and trapped and I starve to death, and someone else has to find me and they have to go through all that, which can be terrible. So like I can go through all these different reasons why gouging out my eyeballs is bad, but it makes you wonder like where did this idea come from in the first place, which kind of goes somewhere in a different direction. But like we can have that thought, we can entertain it if we want, and then we can get to the point where I understand this for myself why I wouldn't do this, if that makes any sense.
I think it was Freud, and I don't agree with everything Freud says, but he talked about the shadow. So you might see yourself and you'll say, hey, I'm going to help out my community. I'm going to donate to charity, and so you see that as yourself. That's your brighter side of yourself, the part you want to embrace and want other people to see. And then you might see, another person who's passed out. They've had too much to drink, and they have a suitcase full of $100 bills, and your shadow, then the darker part of yourself, looks at this person and says, I could take all that money and no one would ever know. And you know that it's not right, but this is the shadow within your psyche going actually against what you probably want to encourage. And so people talked about the shadow, and that's why people talk about shadow work or even embracing their shadow. Ideally, shadow work is realizing what are you against, because that can help to reinforce your values and help you to avoid going into these situations or actions you might disagree with.
This is
So, like
interesting.
how
I
you
like
were
this.
describing with your eyes,
Hmm.
you're like, okay, this is a thought that's popping into my head, but then I think you thought of it and you're like, well, does this represent me? Is this what I really want? And then in a way, I think that's close to shadow work, because you were like, well, no, it's probably better that I keep my eyes. And so ultimately you were able to work with that, realize it was a darker side of yourself, if you're going to go by that description.
Yeah.
And then you were able to say, okay, no, I'm going to keep my eyes in my head.
I think it's powerful to be able to have those thoughts and then go away from them. Like I think we're if we claim something's bad about that, that's not a good thing, because like I believe there's no such thing as a good or a bad thought. They just are. It's like whatever we choose to do with it defines who we are as people, right? But like like having impulsive thoughts isn't bad, and just because it came into your mind doesn't mean you're a bad person.
So thoughts are information, but I think that influence of emotion is important.
Yeah.
But before I go into that, I wanted to say, so Freud, he talked about the shadow, but another thing that's more common in modern therapy and psychology is the idea of CBT, which is cognitive behavioral
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
therapy.
Yeah. 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 I love this.
And
This is good.
I think that's a good idea, because what it is, so the cognition is your thinking, behavior is how you would then behave based on that cognition, and the therapy, of course, is what how you would help someone heal or feel better, what whatever else.
Hmm.
But how it's actually performed is you think about your thoughts, and then you say, wait a minute, how does this affect my behavior? How does this affect my emotions? And then people actually have had a lot of success doing CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And I'm a big fan of it personally.
Yes.
I just want people to be able to understand it to the point that they can effectively apply it. But here's the thing that disturbs me, that applies to propaganda as well. People will say,
Yeah.
okay, so if you if you, I'm trying to think about, let's say if you give to the poor, that's not supporting your country and you're a bad person because the poor are not in the military. You got to serve the military. So by you thinking about your action and your behavior, you'd be like, oh yeah, so I have to help the military because that's how I really help the country. So that changes your behavior by thinking about your thoughts and actions. But it's not necessarily a good thing, depending on what the military does.
Depending on how
See
people
what I'm
like
saying?
can manipulate and how they can control the masses in a sense is like interesting. But I think on on a, like a smaller scale, like on the individual level, it can be like productive, especially if someone like that's talking to you knows about it and can work through your thoughts in real time. I had a really great therapist that did this, but I kind of also developed a sense of doing it on my own in a way by externalizing my thoughts and being more like conscious of like my thoughts in general. Like if I say something negative, like I'll be like, hey Brady, come on, like you don't mean it like that, or like whatever. I don't even know an example right now, but like I'll catch it in real time and then talk to myself and like I'm
First, at someone in traffic, maybe.
or yeah, perhaps or just like correcting those like negative thoughts like, and it's okay having negative thoughts, but like correcting it and fine-tuning the brain so like you don't have them as often. And I think that's one thing that like I tend to internalize a lot of things most of the time, and I'm not always aware or like conscious of like what I'm thinking sometimes, and bringing it out and externalizing it, like saying hi to the trees or the birds, or like talking to whoever in my head, like characters or like God, whoever it might be. I think helps me like work through a lot of these issues and being more aware of like my thoughts and feelings and behaviors, of course.
I got two questions. They might be personal, but one, have you ever considered psychology or being a therapist or helping people with their mental health?
Yes, you're the second person today that my therapist just thought. I talked to her there today because she works at the same place I live at right now, and she's like, "Have you ever thought about going into psychology?" I'm like, "Yes, but like money, I don't want to pay for college again, and like I can just talk to people on here, right? And if some people just want to, have a space to feel vulnerable and share their thoughts, like I'm more than happy to be a listening ear. I'll say I'm not
Brady,
a
you don't.
I'm not
If
a
I may,
therapist,
that's fine.
I'd be
Brady, if I
willing.
may, you
Yeah,
can still go online and do this stuff, and you may be able to get money for it, and you may also have a certification as well. So that might be advantageous. So something that you might want to put in your back pocket to consider.
yeah.
Um, And then the second one, I guess, is do you do writing at all?
I I journal in a sense.
Okay.
It sounds weird to say, but I do like interactive journaling with ChatGPT. I share enough. Like I don't share everything, of course, but like I'm open enough with it to be okay to where it like mirrors back my thoughts. Like I have it. I prompt it in the settings to not like be overly agreeable to like challenge me on stuff too. So this
Trying to
has
be
been
cautious, smart.
so yeah, that does help. I would say, and that's the ways I write. I sometimes do poetry too, or like song lyrics, but like that's been less and less the more I've been going on live. But I like to walk around outside, and I like to just be introspective and think things through because I and like who am I to how do I interact with people around me and how can I be better for people, right? And it's like conversations like this,
Sure.
right? Like and I appreciate you just like coming up and listening and talking and sharing your ideas because with each person I talk to, like I become better. Like you've been educating me on stuff, and I'm more educated on some matters like with what's happening in Israel and why the United States is getting involved in stuff. And we went into like Freud and in the shadow, and I've heard about that before, but like being reminded of it is a good thing too, right? Because I can't remember everything, but I know what I don't know to remain curious, understanding, and open minded. So like I can navigate these conversations, right?
I have a
Yeah,
specific mental condition, but I am kind of, it's strange. People use the term encyclopedic, but I am encyclopedic on some things. I think before I was 10 years old, I read a science encyclopedia from cover to cover just because I was fascinated with it.
that's awesome.
And I love science. Yeah. And so I like to look into things like that. And I realized something too. I like history, but what I realized through history is that culture changes a lot of the times, and it can change in not nice ways because people forget the past. And
Yes.
this is one of the reasons why I try to remember so I can ideally avoid mistakes. Not that I have any power over a nation or anything like that or culture, but if I can avoid being part of it, that will help. Help me not be part of a change that I'd rather not want to see.
Right.
And this is actually why I made a political change, and big, I guess you could call it spiritual change, probably maybe 10, 15 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really important for me. And I was worried about being ostracized from my family, but now they've accepted me. It's really interesting. My own father, who I still talk to, I was really worried because I knew he was into this stuff, but there's some interesting things that happened with him. He's a decent guy, but he was worried about me one time. He said, "Hey, this guy is manipulative. I need you to promise me." This was actually my grandfather, his father. He says, "He can be manipulative. I need you to promise me not to promise him anything." And I
Hmm.
told him, "Dad, do you see the issue with that? So I'm not going to make you that promise, but I want
Mm-hmm.
you to think of if I go to grandpa, am I going to promise him anything unreasonable?" And
Hmm.
my dad's like, "No, you got to promise him." I have to, Dad, listen to me. And then he goes, "Wait a minute. So if you're not going to promise me, despite my insistence, you're probably not going to promise him anything if he insists that you promise anything." And so then he was like, "Okay, well let's go then. I accept that."
Interesting.
But yeah, but then my father, there was a point at which I explained to him, "Dad, I'm not as religious as I used to be. I'm still going to study theology. I still like this type of thing. Like I understand a bit of Judaism and Islam and things like that." But my dad goes, "Oh, well, why not?" And I'm like, "Well, because a lot of these things they agree, but they seem to use this for political means or militaristic means. And I don't want to just be another cog in a machine of a military or in a political system. I want to be a person unto myself,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's why I'm not as spiritual or connected to these systems." My dad goes, "Oh, okay." Now my dad, every once in a while, he'll give me stuff from Sam Cedar, who's an atheistic neurosurgeon. So my dad's even more critical of religion
Oh
than I
wow.
was.
Whoa. Okay.
And I'm like, but my dad and
That's
I, we really get along, and we really do enjoy things in life, which is like people think of the atheist or the agnostic as like really dour or really down. And sometimes I do get down, but my dad and I, like when we enjoy something, we really do enjoy it.
that's
And
awesome.
that's one of the things that I appreciate. So I've actually kind of aligned with my dad that way. The reason why I bring that up, of course, is I'm willing to accept some of these things, and it has caused me to change. But I look at these changes and I think about how am I going to look at back at this 5 or 10 years in the future, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
much happier with who I am now and who I've decided to be according to my principle.
happy for you, man. I hear it from how you talk. I think it's a really great thing just hearing about like the story with your dad, right? Like, this is how it works. Like we see each other as humans, right? And we connect and we can like share ideas to the point where like we can understand what we're doing on this earth together. And your example is a fine example of that, right? And I think the more we just engage people like humans instead of just being dismissive and looking at them and be like,
Seeing them
oh,
as
how
an
do you,
archetype, yeah.
right, we can get somewhere with this, and I believe we
My one
can.
concern is when people willingly make themselves into an archetype because they think it's going to give them power or something.
Ooh.
I wanted to say one thing. Mr. Caleb Murphy is in your comments, and they might want to talk to you.
Oh, Caleb, is this someone I know? I have something I need to get off my chest. Okay. Um, yeah. If you want to end here, we can. But you're more than welcome to come up any other time. I can't see you in my TikTok. But
Oh,
if you want
well,
to
I
end
just
it
wanted to
here,
make sure that they weren't being ignored.
right? We can. Like I tend to just be focused on one person at a time. And we can talk about however it needs to end, it can end. But
Well,
wherever you want
I
to take
said a
this.
lot of stuff, and I apologize if I get into the weeds. Some people say that I get into the weeds too much. I'm okay with that. However, I'll
No,
say
this
this:
is yeah.
how I'm doing right now, I'm stressed out. I am angry because so much of these base wars, these wars, they don't have to happen. And it makes me so angry because I've seen it happen through history. I've seen it happen in my own lifetime, and I'm seeing it repeat, and it makes me so deeply angry. And I'm not anti-conflict. I understand when it hits the defecation, hits the oscillation, you have to do what you have to do. We do not have to do this. And that's
Mm.
why I am so angry. I did serve, and that's why
Oh
I'm so
wow,
angry. Because, and here's the crazy thing: have you heard about all these clogged toilets in the Navy now? They're clogging them on Navy ships.
I haven't.
Yeah, no one can prove it, but there's people stuffing shirts into Navy toilets because they don't want the ships. They're, oh well, this one's an operational. They don't want to be going to these conflict zones.
Oh wow.
So yeah, and my heart kind of bleeds for my other service members because they don't want to be involved in this. They know they don't have to do this, and they
Right,
know that they're stirring the pot when we don't have to.
right,
Right now,
right.
we've actually depleted about half of our missile munitions, which we were
Whoa.
stocking up in case we were attacked by China. We've burned all this up on Iran. You see what the
Holy
problem
hell.
is?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And
yeah.
this is so much stuff that the current administration stirring the pot right now won't tell you. Oh, we're so tough and we're doing so much great. It's like, and I wasn't so concerned about it. I was like, okay, that's annoying, but I don't care. At this point, it's very serious. And
Hmm.
let's say Iran does or doesn't. If they do, okay, we got them. All right. If they don't, well, then we wasted a lot of resources, but maybe we're safe. Right. So, what does Saudi Arabia think of us? What does France think of
Right,
us?
right, right.
It's not just about Iran. What does Brazil think of us? Does Brazil have these munitions? Are we going to invade Brazil? This is what's really getting under my skin. Is there's this focus, this insular focus on Iran? What everyone's already forgotten about Venezuela, right?
Well, it's interesting because, like, what? How do we know? Even if Iran was going to build a nuclear device, like, how do we know they were planning on using it on anyone? Like,
So,
people tend to be like fearful about them terrorizing us, but like, I think we kind of create terrorists in a sense when we go back to war. Like,
well, in a way, here's the thing: we actually had an agreement with the IEA, and this was like the Iran agreement under Barack Obama, which the current president he likes to slander, and he says, "Oh, Obama was so crazy." Here's the thing: that agreement was there so that they would only enrich their material to a certain point, so that they would be able to make power, but not weapons,
oh, I see.
right?
Okay,
And
interesting.
so we were able to go in and say, all right, you guys can have this. We won't bother you. Just make sure it's only enriched to this point. Then we cut out of that, and then they're doing a lot of enrichment. They're not doing anything too serious, but then there's this thing. Oh well, they might make weapons, and guess who that came from? That came from the IDF, who has a reason and a goal to expand out of their territory, and this could lead to an infrastructural expansion and an economic expansion through the Mediterranean and the Middle East. Not that it will, but they do that, and now the goofball in the Oval Office goes, "Oh yeah, of course." So then they do that, and I think that the IDF is not a tool of the U.S. or UK. I think the U.S. is a tool of the IDF because
Hmm.
now it's Americans. who are the ones on the line who have officially gotten involved in this, and now they're the ones who have to risk their hide for the sake of all this nonsense.
Yeah.
And that bothers me.
Yeah, that's for one. Thanks for your service. That's amazing that you did that for us. But also too, like I can from how you explain things, like it sounds frustrating coming from like a person that served, but also as someone that is in the army right now.
You
Like
know what I was training for before I left. This is why it's so bothersome for me. But you have any idea?
no, no, go ahead.
Okay. So I wanted to be in USAF pararescue.
Okay.
And our motto is these things we do so that others may live. Our emblem is a guardian angel. And we literally will find Navy SEALs who are wounded and under fire, patch them up, drag them out, cover them. We are literally known as guardian angels, and not just for U.S. forces. We'll also help other forces around the world. Let's say there was some German or French anti-terror forces somewhere under fire or they were injured as pararescuemen, that would be my job to go in there. We're also called PJs. That
Whoa.
would also be my job to protect them. That's why we're known as guardian angels. And our motto, that being these things we do so that others may live, it means that, listen, if I get taken out of the fight, if I'm done for, if I save two people, if I save one person, these things we do so that others may live.
Mm-hmm.
That's very serious to me.
That's
And
deep.
I got involved with that. It was part of my personal philosophy. I think it still is, but my actions need to reflect it, of course. But I got involved with that, and then I'm not enlisted currently, and
Mm-hmm.
then I see this, I'm like, this is absolutely unnecessary. And the problem is, if more pararescue men and pararescue women, if they're there, I for me it was just men, whatever. I'm open to whoever's in there, but they're going to be having a lot more to deal with if there's special forces getting hurt, regular people getting hurt. Medics are going to be overwhelmed with how much they have to do. This is going to sound really dark. Have you ever seen that movie Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah.
Do you remember on the beach what was happening? There was a basically a veteran medic was explaining to the younger gentleman he was tapping guys. He said, "All right, this guy's a priority. This guy's gone. This guy's a priority. This guy's gone. There are people missing limbs, people bleeding out.
Yep.
That's what it's like." And every one of these people is someone's son. Every one of these people is someone's brother. And that's what bothers me so much. So you put that to American forces, but then you can also put that to the enemy. This is what bothers me. These are not just these archetypes or stereotypes of bad guys. They have families too, and somehow they got
Right.
involved in this conflict.
Right.
One of the things that bothers me about Normandy that I learned, a lot of people in Normandy, they were not French or German. They were actually Polish, they were Slavic, they were Czech, and I am Slavic and Czech. And the reason why they were there is they were kidnapped and put on the front lines by the Germans.
Oh, I did not know about
So a
that.
lot of those people who had to get basically bowled over by the Americans, British, and Canadian, they didn't want to be there either. They were forced to be there by the Germans.
This is sad. I just
Right.
the whole
But that's how war
idea
is, man.
the whole idea of war ever since it's began is such a crazy concept. It's like, yeah, let's put our men and women and whoever like in conflict with another group just to get what they want.
There,
I feel like there's a
to
better
be
way to
fair,
go
there
about it.
there can be reasons for it that are justifiable enough. And let me tell you, when it comes down to it, I'll do what I have to. Only what I have to, though. I'm not going to be excessive if I feel it's unnecessary.
Right.
But that's what bothers me, is I've learned that yes, a lot of this is people just stirring the pot, but it's not just reality television. There's people who are losing their son. There are people losing their father. There are people losing their brother, and that bites me really bad, and that's why I don't like doing it. That's why I'm angry at people for getting involved in this, because if I have to do it, if I have to, put my foot down on this, so to speak, I'm guilty, and I have to accept that. But sometimes it's either me or them, if it's that serious.
Right. I'd be curious like how many people that are currently serving are against it. And if there's even a way to like
Well,
vocalize
like I
that
said, with
to
these
the group.
ships, well, some of these toilets are getting clogged, and nobody's owning up to who did it.
Right.
So these
Right.
ships have to go into port for operation, and they can't get to certain areas. So that's a signal that there are people who are against it.
Right, right. It's just, like I said, it's sad, but I don't like. Didn't so help me understand like the process of getting into work. 'Cause I think don't you have to go through Congress? But like, I think didn't the
You're
president just
supposed to, yeah. That's for a official declaration of war under the representation of the U.S. Here's the problem. Oh, they're a threat. This happened with the Patriot Act. Oh, they're so existential. We can't go through the red tape. Was the whole argument back in the early 2000s. And so the idea was, well, we got to act right now, and we're giving executive power to the president. The president has had he is the commander in chief, but he doesn't have to go through Congress now saying, well, this is a real dangerous thing, and we can't be you know signing stuff right now. We need to take care of it.
well in the
The
Patriot
thing
Act
is,
that just passed not too long ago, right? Or was that has it been implemented since
that's been
2000?
about 26 years, man. Like I said, in
26.
2000. And the
2000.
president's always been commander in chief, but before, let's say it's 1950, they would have to get Congress to agree. And there's an issue with that, though, because Congress can be bribed as well. So friends of the
Oh,
president might say, hey, if you vote with the president, then we can go to war with a certain place, and it might be beneficial for us all. So, but at least back then, you needed more than the executive branch to agree
just
with
one.
that.
Right, right. Interesting. Yeah, I'm still trying to like learn about how all this works within the government. So it's always been good like talking to people that are more educated on the matter. And I tend to
Mr.
like
Brady,
what was that?
here's something to realize. This is how it's supposed to work. That's why the Patriot Act was made, because that was too restrictive for the president at that time. Well, the president and the vice president, but the executive office that wanted to do these things. And so that's why they made the Patriot Act. They got it passed, and then they kind of were able to go hawk wild and do some of the things that you probably shouldn't have done. The founding fathers were trying to do the right thing, and they were like, "Hey, let's try to make sure this isn't just a crazy person doing all this horrible stuff. We'll try to make it go through Congress." And so that was an idea to try to like restrict the craziness of potentially one person.
Right, right.
Even if Congress was a little bit wild, the idea was people are not all going to be so wild. We're going to have some rational voices that might not do this. And you know what? I'll say this: John McCain, bless him, that was one of the last things he did. He proved that that concept can still hold. There was the last. You know what the last vote of Mr. McCain was?
What's that?
So there was the vote on repealing American health care, and there was no plan to replace it. And McCain was right wing. He disagreed with Obama's plan for health care. And I'm not a biggest fan of Obama's plan. It can be better, whatever. But at least there's something there.
Mm-hmm.
And so the right wing needed one last vote to get rid of Obamacare, the little thing that we have for healthcare in the U.S. right now. And so McCain, interestingly enough, who was dealing with cancer, steps up and they say, okay, we need one more vote, Mr. McCain. Just say yes. All we need is your vote and we can get rid of healthcare. Mr. McCain steps up there, says one word, no, walks out. He passed away on the surgery table
Oh man.
and could never vote again.
Yeah.
But you see how he is truly serving the nation, and he sees that people have this value. And he's saying, listen, unless you have a plan to replace this, you are not getting it through. And just one man with courage makes a majority. That wasn't McCain,
Right.
that was Andrew Jackson. And I
Okay.
think that was proven by Mr. McCain saying, no, I'm not going to get rid of people's health care. You have to do something better before you get rid of the old plan.
Right. It's like baffling that people want to get rid of like I've heard Social Security if that's going away. I don't know, or like even Medicare and Medicaid. I know my friends. Their dad runs an organization where they rely on Medicaid to help people out, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for them to continue with their business. But also with just people that need basic healthcare needs, it's sad that we can't even like provide for them in that way. It's there's a lot of depressing things when it gets into like how the world operates. But I'm still trying to like be optimistic about how the future can become if we keep having dialogues like this, and like we're just like reaching to an idea where we can like I'll take this energy and I'll go off to like people in the future and bring that to them, right? I don't know what the answers are, but I think if we keep trying something might happen.
Well, I think a big part of it is this idea of doomerism. A lot of people want folks to give in to doomerism and think that, oh, it's all, pointless anyway, throw up your hands. I get that. I really do. A lot of stuff is dark. Here's the thing. That's when heroes are made. That's when real champions are shown in the darkest, worst times. And that's why I have so much respect for McCain. Even though I don't agree with the Vietnam War in which he served, he cared about people. He really did. And he wanted to use his courage to help others. And he did. With his last vote, he helped to protect the medical stuff that people have right now. So even in that dark time, with all that pressure, one word, one vote. No, I'm not going to let you, repeal the healthcare we have right now. And he
Mm.
passed away, but he passed away as a hero, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's pretty great. Just for someone to stand up and like have a backbone too when it comes to like their own party. Like sometimes like it tends to be the case from what I've seen is like people just go with the flow in a sense. Um,
Yeah.
like
Well,
when
and
it
the
comes,
thing I wanted to say this too. I want to be an equal opportunist. Some people will say equal rights. Sometimes I'll say equal wrongs. Like that's it's dark, but I want to recognize that on the left you can have people doing stuff too. Actually, Trump had a great he had a great idea because Hillary Clinton she wanted a Trans-Pacific Partnership to get through. He said, "No, I'm not going to allow the Trans-Pacific Partnership because that would put American jobs in within Malaysia. We shouldn't send American jobs to sweatshops." And so I heard Trump say that. I'm like, oh, okay, well that's good. He wants to keep American jobs in America.
Mhm.
He becomes president, and in NAFTA, he does TPP and more policies like that that ship out American jobs. So when he was running back in 2016 or 2015 to 2016, I was like, oh, hey, good, he's against TPP. The rest of the stuff I'm not so sure about. And then he gets right down to it with NAFTA in 2017. And then he puts TPP on steroids, as it was said by one pundit. And we now are losing more and more American jobs, and American workers have less protections. That's
Interesting.
awful. But
What's
I'm going to say
TTP
if
stand for?
the Trans-Pacific Partnership,
Oh,
which
Trans-Pacific.
Clinton was for, and it was like one of these things that a lot of corrupt Democrats were going for. And she would have gotten kickbacks. She would have gotten money as well from these industries saving money because they wouldn't have to pay American workers. They'd be, getting stuff built in the sweatshops in Malaysia.
Oh,
That's in the Pacific.
okay.
But my point being then is that Hillary Clinton, there was a problem with that policy. And if Trump had actually been against that, which unfortunately he actually wasn't, he was for it because he allowed that. And then he did even worse. So he would get more donations and things like that from the,
Mm,
clothing manufacturers and stuff that back him.
right.
So, but if he had been against that, I would say, great, yeah, go for it. But it didn't turn out that way. If it had turned out that way, I would have said, see, he kept his word and he helped protect American jobs. And that's why I'm not biased one way or another. I'll be open to whoever is effective and who is actually going to do policy that's effective and reasonable. Unfortunately, that's not what we've been seeing right now. We haven't been seeing a ton
Right.
of reasonable policy.
Right. It's a lot of hey, like I'll say this to get elected and then not even do it in the first place, which I think happens, you know,
There's
on both
one you
sides.
ever look into parody politicians? They can be really fun.
I haven't.
Um,
I never know the thing.
oh, there's a gentleman called Vermin Supreme, and he so names himself because he says all politicians are vermin, but I'm the best one. So I'm Vermin Supreme. He wears a boot on his head, and he explains to people that when the zombie apocalypse comes, he has a plan. He's going to put the zombies on hamster wheels and put brains in front of them so they turn the hamster wheels to give Americans power during the zombie apocalypse.
Oh,
So
nice.
I'm a tacit supporter of Vermin Supreme because he actually has good policy. We haven't dealt with the zombie apocalypse, but if it happens,
Oh
Vermin
no,
Supreme is definitely going to be a good leader.
that's hilarious. That is
But yeah,
great.
parody politicians, they're out there, and Vermin Supreme is among them. That's one of the reasons why I'm glad, because it's like he's actually exercising his First Amendment right to say the freedom of speech. It might sound very out there, but it's still entertaining, and he's actually adding something to the American community with his opinions.
I love that. That's fantastic. Oh man,
He
what's
did
his name
another
again?
thing too. Vermin Supreme. Again, all politicians are vermin, but he's the best one. So he's Vermin Supreme. He
Oh
wears
yes,
a
I
boot
see his
on his head.
picture. Okay,
Okay,
great.
and he's a great guy. At least I think so. And the one another thing, there's a very anti-gay politician, and so Vermin Supreme, he was on like a debate panel with this anti-gay politician. He said he mentioned his policies, and then he said, "Oh, also God told me to tell Mister this man, God told me to make this guy gay. Here we go. He took out some glitter and sprinkled it on the guy. He says, "Yep, see, now you're magically turning gay. All right, I did my mission for God. Thank you, Oklahoma. Vote for
Oh
me." I mean,
man.
whoever he was supposed to be, but he was escorted out by security just because he had to
What?
fulfill God's mission. Yeah, he's a very interesting type of person.
I
Person,
love
but
that.
and then
I've heard.
there's a parody conspiracy group that I'll follow called Birds Aren't Real. They say no birds are actual birds; they are government drones, and they don't migrate. They're going to government centers to recharge and get a software update. So they're not they're all robots. So Birds Aren't Real is another group that's into that.
I've actually heard about that, and people like actually believe it. Like, do you believe it?
Birds Aren't Real.
Yeah.
I love the organization. I can say that much. I can say where do birds actually go during the winter? But of course, you can probably understand my implication.
No, no, I get
But
it.
it helps to make it helps to understand why some things we can make light of, some things we don't have to consider so dark or like, oh, these people are so awful. Like it's yeah, there's awful people out there. I like some of these people who believe relatively harmless things, the space alien stuff and things like that. I've looked into it. I understand how it would work if there were space aliens or whatever. But some people are like, oh yeah, space aliens. They completely stole the peanuts I left out on my deck, and there's some squirrels eating peanuts in the the a little squirrel nest nearby. I'll look at them and I'll say, tell me more about these aliens. Oh, they always
Right.
come when I'm not looking. And it's like, I see. So it's I'm entertained by that. I'll to have that dialogue with them, but I'm not going to be maybe fully convinced by their argument about space aliens stealing the peanuts when there's squirrels, in their
Right.
backyard.
It's like poking holes into the theories. It's interesting sometimes. 'Cause I talked with, oh man, I was going out and this guy had this water bottle that was like fizzing on the bottom, like it was bubbly on the bottom, and it was like illuminated blue on the bottom. I'm like, dude, that's a cool water bottle. He went into every little conspiracy theory you can ever think of, starting with how like there wasn't copper pipes and plastic pipes are bad, and he started with that, and then went off to that there's like elite family and like the Titanic was gonna like sink these like five people, and one of them knew not to get on it. To all these other just like other things that was like, whoa, dude, like let's just like settle down, and he was just like really just riling off all these different ideas, and it's
Because of the
interesting.
fizz in his bottle, right?
Right, right, no, but it's interesting talking to people like this, but like also poking holes, like I said, into things. Like, wouldn't it be interesting if the Titanic wasn't built to like off these rich people, but like couldn't it be the case where like someone could just come with a baseball bat into their house and just go for it? Like, wouldn't that be
Yeah,
more
alpha. Yeah.
convenient? Wouldn't that be more convenient? Or like you want to kill innocent lives, right? Or I don't know if I can say that, but
Well, take out the millionaires or whatever who were on the Titanic. I know it is. And then the idea was to like make a merger of these companies, right?
something like that. It's something about the Federal Reserve, or I don't even know how it goes, but
Oh
um,
boy. Did you ask him what he thought of Jewish folks? Because unfortunately, a lot of this comes back to some by it. And again, I said that I think there's some issues there, like with Zionism, but a lot of it comes down to that, and it's not always fair. There's
what
also blood libel we have to worry about.
what about the Federal
Okay.
Reserve?
So Federal Reserve is on. It's where we actually keep a reserve of money for the U.S. and it's actually how you can pay out a lot of things. But it's also in case of an emergency, you could tap into it. Again, you'd have to vote on it whether you'd use the money. But some people say, "Oh, they're taking all our money and they're stealing it and they're putting it in there and then they're doing it for elite crimes and stuff."
Hmm.
People who have access to it. The thing is, always you don't ever get like these stand up, buttoned up, nice, brushing their teeth types who are accused of it. These wonderful Christians like our current president. It's always people who are Jewish, and it could be a Jewish person running a convenience store down the street, and they're accused of messing with the Federal Reserve and doing elite crimes. So
Hmm.
that's the issue with it. So, and that's why like people will get into these theories about Jewish folks. And look,
Yeah.
there's things you can connect, but a lot of times it's an implicit bias where they say, oh, they're all greedy and they took out the Christ. And I'm like, okay, one, no, technically that was Rome, and the crowd was like, against. They were at Golgotha, so whoever was there. But then there was Simon, who was a foreigner who helped the Christ carry the cross. So he was, I don't think he was necessarily Jewish. Anyway, but yeah, they have stuff against Jewish folks, and they say that they're controlling everything, and
Yeah,
I'm
that's
kind of against
yeah.
that.
I met so last year I had a different TikTok profile while I was manic, which was chaotic. But also, people educated me on a lot of things too. But I ended up having a guy up that was against the Holocaust, like it didn't happen apparently. And I was like,
Yep.
dude, like
That's
what?
a clear sign.
I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he pointed to this documentary, um, like basically saying like all Jews are bad because like they don't. I don't even know the reason anymore. But like essentially they
Yeah.
just want to be the only ones or something like that. And I'm like, dude, like, do you really think? Do you really think all these people are like that? Like they all think
You
that
ever
way?
ask him about what a pogrom is?
A what?
You know what that is?
A pogrom?
Okay, you know what a lynching is, don't you?
Yes, where like you get whipped, right, on the back.
No,
Oh,
much worse.
oh
So
wait, no, is it?
lynchings
Okay, go ahead. Yeah,
lynchings in the South are where usually a couple of white people would get together. They would find a black guy who had a white girlfriend or something, and then they would end this guy, hang him, and say, "Hey, don't
right.
be with the black people." That was a lynching, and
Okay,
they still unfortunately happen today. They're not supposed to be talked about, but and that's not a conspiracy theory. It just happens. A lot of
right,
black guys end up, committing suicide somehow with 3 rounds to the back of their head, in the South. So then pogroms are similar to that, except worse. There's entire cities, and this is more of a medieval thing, but I learned about them actually from a video game where I saw the word pogrom mentioned. I asked someone and I looked it up. But a pogrom is when a small Jewish communities who are usually on the outside of like a city or a community, again, Middle Ages usually is where the term comes from. They would be attacked because, like, let's say someone had a bad harvest. They'd say, "Oh, the Jews are doing their black Jewish magic or something," and they would
oh,
attack the entire community and they would end the Jewish folks in pogroms.
hmm,
And so these people don't know about pogroms, but they'll talk about, oh, the Holocaust wasn't really,
that's
forget all of
interesting.
that.
I'm gonna remember that
Jewish
next
people
time.
have been suffering for like hundreds of years,
Hmm,
since the Middle Ages, and we have terms that describe that. And
right,
for them to say that, the Holocaust didn't happen, the Holocaust was just a mechanized pogrom against Jewish folks.
hmm,
And that's what makes me so angry about people who do that. And it wasn't just Jewish people. Remember, I mentioned that I was Slavic. Another target of this was Romani gypsies.
yeah,
And gypsy is an offensive term, but it's like they were Romani. And then, of course, some of my own people that may have been, shipped off to Normandy against their will. It just makes me so angry that
right,
people forget this history. And again, too, it happened a long time ago. I acknowledge that, but it's like things like that are happening now, and it is awful. And that's what makes me
definitely,
so angry when people are dismissive of it or they come up with these theories. And I know where they come from, but my issue is they're not putting two and two together. They're looking at what other people are doing for them. It's propaganda. And they say, oh, well, it's not allowed by the government. It's like, no, it's not allowed because it's inflammatory, it's hateful, and it's leading to this more of this nonsense that
right.
is cruel to people unnecessarily. And that's why it's usually not allowed or encouraged.
Right. I think just like viewing anyone like below yourself, like they're not worthy or like they're different or whatever it might be, I think is problem. Like there's a problem to that, and we ought to just see each other as humans and come together. And I know that's like very like
You've heard of this
outdated,
gentleman.
but
Well, I shouldn't call him that. Have you heard of someone called Nick Fluentes?
yes.
This guy bites me so bad. I'm pale as a sheet. And this gentleman has a last name of Fluentes, who has his family come from Mexico, and he's talking about how we should hurt a bunch of black people. And my thing is like, dude, do you not realize that if you get this ball rolling, you're next on the list? This is
Right.
what bothers me about that type of thing. And it's like I'm not trying to be purer than thou. I'm just saying this is how this stuff goes.
Right.
And having seen some things that are not pleasant in conflict, you don't want to be there when that happens. And that's what bothers me so much. And you can even look at this in 1940, which ironically, Fluentes, he thinks that Germany in 1940s was so wonderful. There were German officers who would disappear. One of them was known for liking men instead of women. He
Hmm.
disappeared.
Hmm.
So there's a bit of a problem with that. And these people will get behind it at first, and then when the ball gets rolling, there's a problem. There's a good poem about that. I can't remember it in full, but it said first they came for the Jews, and I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't speak up.
Right.
Then they came for the communists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a communist. And then they came for me, and no one spoke up for me because no one was left.
Right. Yeah. No,
And
I've heard
that's what we
about that.
need to remember about this.
It's deep. It's true, and it's universal to just how things are, like how people operate. Right.
I'm not
Um.
Jewish, I'm not black, but I realize that I would hope that a black or Jewish person would speak up for me if I was being mistreated. You know what I'm saying?
Right. 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 Um. Yeah. It's something I go back to a lot with people is talking about Daryl Davis. Have you ever heard of that man before?
I actually haven't.
Okay, yeah. So he is an African American musician, like blues and rock and roll pianist, and
Oh, cool. Okay.
so he's really good at that. But I don't know how long ago. This was back maybe in the 70s or 80s or maybe before that. He convinced Ku Klux Klan members to deconvert, and they gave him his robe, their robes, right?
That is insane. I love
Right,
that though.
right. It's amazing because like
Oh wait, no,
you
I know this guy. I've seen him. He has a whole collection and he shows it off.
yeah. It's he's such a cool guy. He's like that is like the peak like good man right there. Like
I agree.
seeing people as humans, connecting with them, like being a human with another human, and
Well, and
coming
that's
forward
why I
and
talk about
progressing.
archetypes because when they see him, they see probably see he's very intelligent. He's probably very kind. And it's like, wait a minute. I was told that because you're black, you wouldn't be intelligent or you wouldn't be kind. And then he's like, well, what do you think now? And they say, well, there's obviously some contention there, you know? And
Right,
so I think that's what helps when people don't just follow archetypes, but try to follow reality. And I'm sure that Mr. Davis was able to apply this reality, showing his kindness and intelligence, probably patience with these
right.
people.
Right. I would love to talk with him sometime, just like hear the stories and like how like his like how he went into these like environments with these people. So that would be like a super scary thing to do, right? Just like that's
It'd
like
be dangerous,
amazing
yeah.
that he was able to even accomplish this in the first place. But it just goes to show
Well,
like just being present and being there for people goes a long way. And I think
Jack,
I think the more
I
we do it,
referenced Jackson. I wanted to say this. I referenced Jackson. He was not a perfect person, but his quote, one man with courage makes a majority. I think that Mr. Davis was kind of applying that, showing that his courage was what helped him so that he could go against people that he knew probably wouldn't be particularly friendly to him at first and talk to
right,
them and say, all right, are you sure about this? And try to eventually help them to see the light.
right. That's why I think it's so important to have dialogues like this, like healthy dialogues, where we can like showcase like what a conversation can be like in a deep level, without it being like argumentative or like negative in any way. Like it's just two people coming together, and we're figuring this out together, right? And we can do this on a smaller scale, and then it just grows and grows and grows, and who knows where it takes off to, right? I think I'm pretty optimistic about that with the people I've had on my live. Like I'm not saying my channel's gonna blow up, and I don't know if it will or not, but I'm happy just to have a couple people hanging out and just listening to this too, and then having you, of course, come up and talking. I really do appreciate just your time and your willingness to be open and talk about these issues.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. I wanted to show you one thing really quickly. Oh, I don't know if that was really well spelled out, but hold on. I'm going to turn on my camera here
Okay,
and show you something that I wrote. See, I'm really big into history and stuff like this, but I keep referencing Jackson. Gosh, how do I turn on my camera? I'll figure this out.
here I
Here it
can
is.
invite you to turn on camera. There you go.
No, 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 I think I got it. That's not a flattering picture. There you go. This is what I wanted to show you. So this is the Elder Futhark.
I can't see you.
It's oh, hold on. There we go.
There we go.
Can you see
Okay,
this?
I'm gonna expand you out. Okay, whoa, yeah, there we go.
So I wrote this by hand. This is the Elder Futhark. This is what Vikings would actually write in. Actually, technically the
Whoa.
younger Futhark, but
Okay.
yeah. So I wrote it out, and you see this written below, and
Yeah.
then there's a thorn here, which I took as a Taiwas and Haywads. So it follows English, but technically thorn was also used in English. But can you guess what that says right at the
I'll try
bottom?
my best. It's gonna be wrong, but him past pith, centrism, pathsons, and mechan spirits.
Close. So you could decipher this, of course, symbol for symbol. So that's Jera. That's the room for J. But it's the line that I like from Jackson. I started off this notebook with that line that I like. One
Oh
man with
yeah,
courage makes a
yeah.
majority, and I can prove that because it starts with the rune Othala for O.
Okay.
Othala O, Ingwaz N,
Huh.
and then Iwas E, one. So you know this first word is one. So it's one man with courage makes a majority.
Okay.
I just wanted to show you that. So
Yeah.
it's
No,
interesting.
I appreciate that. I've kind of
But I really
it's
am committed to this type of thing because I like that. And history, I really think, can kind of, some people say that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And I
huh.
believe in that.
That's interesting.
So that's one of the reasons why I study history and I see these parallels. But again, even though Jackson wasn't always the nicest person to other races, specifically, he wasn't super nice to Native Americans. The reality is, Mr. What was it, the gentleman's name who's interacting with the white robe goofballs?
Davis, Daryl Davis, Daryl Davis.
Davis. Davis is proving the concept that one man with courage making the majority is true. Oh, well, there's more people, they're going to beat you up. Do they have courage?
No, that's
No,
fear. That's fear
but
talking.
he did. He had courage, and it's really interesting. I think a lot of these groups are full of cowards. And again, that's kind of something they chose, unfortunately. But they like the illusion of power. The real power comes from your own soul and your own commitment to doing what is right. And I think Mr. Davis was able to commit to that, and he was able to have courage in his soul to actually address that. And that's what made him the majority in those situations where people would listen to him, and eventually he had the result that he wanted, where they said, "Okay, I'm going to put this other stuff behind me." But that's
Right.
why I try to keep history in context. That's why it didn't happen exactly the same way. But like I said, history doesn't always repeat itself, but it does rhyme.
Right. I like that. I like that phrase. That's interesting. Yeah, I think pointing that out to people and educating people more on history is good, right? Not taking it away, not defunding it. I think it's important, to be
When
educated.
people do want to defund it, like when the current executive administration wanted to get rid of exhibits on American slavery, why would they
Right.
want to do that? Why would they
Right.
want people to forget that? I think I know why.
Yeah. It's sad. Uh, but that's like I keep going back to this. This is why like we can like have conversations like this, and even at a smaller scale, like it's still important, right? And everything that you've shared is helping me become
Well,
a
I would
better
argue
person
it's
for
excuse me.
people I be in real life, right?
I
Or
would argue it's more than important. I would say it's vital because once we forget what's happened in the past, that's when we become subject to things we can't predict or foresee. When we look
right,
at what's happened in the past, we realize, oh, so this has happened before. This is how it played out. So then we can be better prepared for things as they happen, or we can assume or have a little bit of a prediction of what might happen. And that's one
right.
of the reasons why I try to study history.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. I think that's great that you do that, and yeah, I mean it's smarter.
Anyway, I do encourage you to look into psychology. It seems like something you might have a passion for, and you might be able to continue doing things that you're doing now, but also have some sort of certification, and you might be able to um, have profitable gain from it.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the future leads me in this and with this. Like, I could go back to school. I don't know if I want to pay money for it though. But it is something that I think is important to understand mental health because I believe it's severely misunderstood by a lot of people. And
Oh, it's intentionally misunderstood too.
right, it's these systems that are put in place for us to think in a
Well,
way
I
that's
wanted to say the one thing quickly about mental health. If I have, let's say, depression, and I want to become mayor, right? Does that mean something? Say, oh, he's mentally ill, he's crazy? It's like, no, I just sometimes I have a bad week, right?
right.
That doesn't mean that I'm going to be spending all our money on lollipops one day. It just means that I might not feel super great about something for whatever reason because I deal with the mental illness of depression.
Right, and it's really coming to understand like why people are having these symptoms or like these illnesses in the first place, and I think communicate it in such a way where we can help them, like with CBT, for instance. I think
Sure.
like how we talk to ourselves is super important, right? And the narratives we tell ourselves with storytelling, whether that's about ourselves, whether that's about the group of people we are surrounded with, the world, whatever it might be, or God, or in religion and spirituality. Um,
Well,
like
I
how we
want to I
talk
want
to
to make
ourselves
one
is
point
so important.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, but I want to make two quick points about mental health. So the idea of like, oh, I have depression, and then it would be I might be a bad mayor or whatever. So um, a lot of times people, or they'll say low IQ. I've heard that's been a bigger thing. Here's the thing. Um, People tend not to understand anything about mental health when they accuse others of having poor mental health. And the
Hmm.
thing about mental health is it is not uh, an exact comparison to cognitive health or ability. People say, oh, you're mentally disabled, you must have cognitive disability. No, doesn't. I might be a psychopath. That means it's hard for me to feel emotions and stuff. That's why I think it is. So I could still be really good at math. And they say, "Oh well, you're a psychopath. You have issues with your brain." Well, technically that's true. We don't trust you now to calculate the races or the money here. It's like no, I could be very very talented actually. Because it's not my cognitive ability, it would be my mental ability, which includes feeling people's emotions. So I might get all the numbers correct, perfect, but then I might be like someone wins and they're super happy, and I'd be like, okay, this is $1 million. Make sure that you collect everything, and there will be no change. Just very blank, and then people are like, this guy's well, what's going on? That's a lot of money. Most people are like, congratulations, woohoo. Well, I might be mentally disabled. I might not be able to feel emotion the same way. But
Right.
that's the point. Is it's not going to disqualify me from doing a job very well. Like I can still do a job very well, even if I had some sort of mental disability. And the same thing, interestingly enough, with cognitive stuff. Sometimes kids are really well helped by people who have high EIQ, which is actually emotional intelligence quotient.
Hmm. Hmm.
I took a test. I actually scored high for IQ and EIQ, but
Hmm.
EIQ could be good for someone who's teaching a preschool. They might see a kid crying, and where someone's very intelligent but not very emotionally intelligent, there might be an issue. But EIQ, they would go to that kid and say, "Hey, what's wrong? Oh, hey, well, some days are bad," or just make the kid feel better.
Right.
High
Right.
EIQ people can be really good with that because they have really good emotional intelligence. So
Right.
that's the points that I'm trying to make about that. People
Yeah.
who talk about that tend not to understand. There was a guy I was talking to a long time ago. He said, "Oh, you have an IQ of 70." I'm like, "What would that mean?"
I
I
don't
don't know,
know.
but you're stupid, or you have an IQ of 5. And then I said, "Okay, so what's your IQ?" He says, "My IQ is 250." I said, "How is your IQ 250?" He said, "Well, I took a test or a bar and my score was 250, something along those lines." And I'm like, "That's impossible. That is actually impossible." He goes, "No, you're just stupid. You don't get it." I'm like, "No, it's
Ooh.
impossible because if I had a 70 IQ, that would mean I have 70% of average intelligence. A 100 IQ, I asked them too, what is 100 a high IQ? They, yeah, that's high. That sounds high. It's like, nope, that's average. 100 is literally the average. That's what your IQ is scored by. And so if someone has an IQ of 90, that's all right, but you're technically not as good as the average IQ. And you cannot have 250 intelligence. You might be able to be up to like, I'm guessing like 150 would be close to the max for a lot of people, but no one's hitting 200% of average intelligence. And this also
Yeah.
is general intelligence. But anyway, my point is when people say low IQ, they tend not to know how it works. When they say negative IQ, that's again completely impossible. I've heard that in insults, and it's like,
Negative
no,
IQ.
yeah, no, because how do you get a negative of the average? Do they
Oh
have to
man.
be? Do they have to pass away, not be living, and then undo everything that they did in their life? Just be destroying everything as a
Right.
corpse? You see what I'm saying? It's not possible to have a negative IQ. You could have a very low one. You could have an IQ of 5, and that would be awful. But that would not be negative. You see what I mean? And I'm saying so. An IQ of 5 again would mean you would have 5% of average intelligence. That's all it is.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so for me, actually understanding it, and people will throw around stuff about IQ as an insult or try to, gas themselves up. Also, your test score on, like a college exam or an ASVAB or something like that is not akin to your IQ test. An IQ test has to be done by a psychologist, and they have specific tests where they try to help find your pattern recognition and things like that associated specifically with intelligence. It doesn't go for well, some of it's memory recall, but they don't just do how well you can answer about American history or whatever. You see what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Like it's like you
But
said, it's
that's
like
why
pattern, like visuals, isn't it? in a sense,
Yes, they'll do
or
things like that. It just
yeah,
all these different things. There's a lot of mathematics, but the point is to try to find actual functional intelligence, not just how good you would be academically.
yeah. Interesting. I think I took one back when I was Munich in 2022. I don't remember how it went. But I just remember seeing it was like different patterns and like different ways like determining what the next pattern is going to be like. I think, but I don't know even if that was like a true accurate like test at
Did they
all.
time you?
No, I will. Did they? Maybe I don't remember.
They probably would time you, and a lot of the things they'll do is, so like, for let's say for me it might take me 20 minutes to understand what the next pattern is, and I might get it correct in 20 minutes. You might get an answer and have it incorrect in 2 minutes. That's not You're not going to be getting a higher score. So your confidence could be high, but your accuracy wouldn't. However, if you got it correct in 1 minute compared to me getting it correct in 20 minutes, that would
Oh,
mean you have 20 times the intelligence that I would have for that question specifically.
interesting.
You,
Huh?
and so then they would compare that result to all the averages, and then they would score you based on that.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's,
yeah.
dude, and I could talk
Interesting.
about, like, people brag about the number of their IQ. It's like bragging about the length of your anatomy. You know what I mean? Between your legs.
Right,
But for me, like, you can probably tell that I'm not 100, but I'm not sub 100. But I'm not going to be trying to brag to people about that, because I feel like it doesn't matter. I shouldn't have to be trying to brag to people. I should be trying to help people understand, hey,
right.
this is what it really means. This is why we shouldn't be using it as insults and things like that.
Right, and I think no, I see that in you too. Like humbleness, I suppose would be the right word, but also just how you like carry yourself with this conversation. Like you're like it's easy to talk with you, and I feel safe opening up to you. But like it's also one of those things where it's what was I gonna say? Um,
We're talking about intelligence. You're talking about conversation.
yeah, it's just easy to talk with you. So I appreciate you
Oh, one more thing
just
you
saying that.
might have been good on, the idea of people insulting each other with the numbers of IQ and things like that.
Yeah, I don't see I don't understand why people do that. I mean, I could understand like just people want to like be feel dominant maybe or like a sense of like um I don't know.
Well,
It's
it's like having the
something I want to
bigger
do.
muscles, kind of.
Right, right. Just like comparing and like I don't it's I don't sometimes I don't even trust like the IQ tests that I mean that are online at
Well,
least.
that's
Um
fair, man. That's one of
I
the things that they're working on, for like consistently trying to make it better. Unfortunately, some of the funding's not great for that. But I'll tell you this about education. So I got kicked around a lot when I was a kid, in schools. My scores were usually pretty good, but I ended up missing a lot of classes, and but I still passed. I still graduated on time. But I went to so many different schools. I was expelled. I had a lot of issues in school, but
mhm.
I did fine. People could tell that I wasn't, I didn't get kicked by a horse. They could tell I was capable enough. And my mother told me something, because she, for a while, homeschooled me. Actually, did pretty good during that time. I think I was pretty sharp mathematically then. But one of the things my mother told me that I really liked, and I'm not sure if I think she got this from someone else, but the quote was, "If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will go its entire life thinking it's stupid."
I like that. Yes.
So some people are just much better at other things, and we can't be cruel to someone just because they're different.
Right. I think we have to understand who they are as people, right, and see what's going on inside of their minds. Because this has been the interesting thing about going to psych wards in the past in different hospitals. The last one of the last hospitals I went to, there is this woman who people would call like challenged, but she was actually pretty intelligent with like how she used her eyes, and I was very much trying to like work with her in mania as I get interesting with like
Well, you
just
could pick up some of the things she's probably trying to imply, right?
right. People were not listening to her. People would be rude to her. And then she would act out. If someone reacted to her in a negative way, she would react, and she felt like it was justified, which I understand. But she got violent with people, and she would call people words, and I'd try to like get back with her, and simmer her down, like hey, or there's different things like if she was like screaming out loud. Um, I kind of mirrored it, but with a song in a sense, and just like telling her like I see her and I hear you, and
Sure.
we'll get through this, right?
So that's a
And
different type of intelligence. If I could, I think that would tie into something closer to EIQ, emotional intelligence.
yeah, I can't count like look, I have to count my fingers to do math. I'm not that intelligent. But when it comes to like understanding people, I think I have understood that a little bit more than I think most people, but not most, but maybe some. Like I think I just am super introspective and reflective, and I don't want to harm people, and I'm trying my best to just figure out what we're doing on this earth together, and coming on here and just having the
Well, that's
dialogue.
why
I think is yeah.
I wanted to say, so definitely I would recommend journaling in a little book, kind of like what I had written down in my notebook with Elder Futhark and writing actually in runes. I love that. But I would suggest all these thoughts you have, say everything, all
Mm-hmm.
of it, write it down. And then you don't need to worry about it being online or in a data system. It's in your book. So even if it's like a little bit concerning, you can look at that and you can be honest with yourself about that. That's
Right.
what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
So just write it down and then kind of read it what you had written yesterday or something like that, or when you had an idea. I would suggest that, and then to check out psychology. It might be something that could be great for you. And then I
Yeah.
wanted to say one thing. You remember when I was talking about getting kicked around from school to school? I had been expelled at one point.
Mm-hmm.
I am not sure, but someone, Vito Phillies, said, well deserved, probably.
Oh shoot.
Archetypes.
Just saw that note.
It's okay. It's okay. Hear me out. Archetypes. So someone who gets expelled from school is full of themselves, a bully, a horrible person. That's the archetype of that. My
Mm-hmm.
family moved a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually was a target of bullying. And so sometimes people would make up stories about me. One of the things I had when I went to a private school, I'm sorry for cutting in, but I got to say this quickly. I went to the playground. The kids were kicking me in the shins, and basically turned my shins to hamburger. I kicked them back. I had learned Shotokan. So they had the similar looking shins, like 5, 6 kids. I kicked them back, but they kicked me. These kids, when I came back from recess on the playground at this private school, the principal called me aside, and there were two of these kids, and they said, "Hey, Phoenix had hurt us," and they showed their shins. The entire time, the principal never asked me why, never asked to see my shins, never asked to see anything on me. But what I did, as they were looking at these two kids that had ganged up on me, they done that, and the principal was like, "You shouldn't do this. Don't you know how bad this is? You're really messed up. You're really violent." And the whole time I was like, "Yep," but I took it as a badge of honor because they had to go to the principal because they had attacked me and then I had fought back. So that was their way of trying to get back at me. But
Yeah.
they had
Definitely.
also kicked me. And so that was something that I'll always remember. And so when someone says well deserved for something that, happened to me that wasn't pleasant, well, when you know the full story, I would suggest you to make that judgment. And if you still think that I deserved pain and whatever I got, that's fine. That's how you feel. I might disagree. Obviously, I'm going to have a bias, but there's a
Right.
lot of details that we ought to consider, I think.
No, you're totally right. I think people just making judgments on just hearing the end result is not a good thing. That's happened to me a lot. It
Remember
sucks being
this.
misunderstood, and it's frustrating.
There's fear of the unknown, and so when there's a chance you're not right, or there's a chance your archetypes might not be correct, and you can't judge people and you can't oppress others or lord over them. That's scary. One of the things I notice about tyrants is that, or people with a tyrannical or cowardly mindset, is they worry that if other people have power over them, that those other people will be cruel and unkind the way they are cruel and unkind to the people they oppress.
That's
That's
interesting.
not how it is.
Right.
That's not how it is. And that's one of the things I really am going to try to double down on myself. It's tough for me, but I've had to go through a couple of things. But I've realized I can be unpleasant, and when it push comes to shove, I will be doing both pushing and shoving to the point where I can get the job done. But I won't do it more than necessary. I won't hurt someone just because they're vulnerable. I won't go after the weak. I tend to try to, if something happens in a video game, I go after the strong first, and then I want people who are vulnerable to, kind of be able to grow. And if someone is strong, I'm hoping that they would use that strength for a good purpose.
Definitely.
physical, mental, what, or even like social strength, or like being praised or popular, famous, whatever. I hope they would use that for a good reason. But I realize there's people who don't use their strength, power, and privilege for good things. But yeah, I will, like I said, in video games, go after the most powerful first to try to make sure that that's not going to hurt the vulnerable.
Right. I think people tend to get selfish with their intents, and that kind of drives who they are as people and how the choices they make. But I would go a step back further and be like, well, we're determined who we are by our biology and our environment, and however that plays out determines how we are as adults. And I would say this confidently that I think everyone to ever exist has been hurt by someone else. Uh, and I think it's important to understand people's stories so we can work together and progress as human beings. And I
I want to
truly,
address one thing in that. You ever heard something called persecution complex?
I haven't.
Okay, it's a thing that happens usually when people live very comfortable, very secure lives. So a persecution complex would happen. So let's say I'm, like a like a mega church pastor's son, let's
Mm-hmm.
say,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm going around, I'm grocery shopping, let's imagine. And everyone in my mega church had said, "Yeah, God's real and I'm holy and I'm blessed." And then I run into a Muslim at the grocery store and the Muslim says, "Well, no, the Christian God's not real and Jesus wasn't God, he was just a prophet." And I say, "You're attacking me." He's like, "Well, no, I'm just saying what I'm taught in Islam." And I said, "No, you're attacking me and you're trying to corrupt everything. I'm being persecuted. I am under attack by this Muslim in the grocery store who's just having a conversation in the checkout line or whatever." See, and so that is the persecution complex. When
Interesting.
someone's living so comfortably that any challenge to the way they see the world is an attack in their mind. You see what I'm saying? So the Muslim guy didn't kick me. The Muslim guy didn't pull out a weapon. He's just saying, well, no, I don't think you're correct about the way you see religion. And so that's where it's interesting when people have these persecution complex. They'll say, "Oh, I'm so persecuted. Things are so bad," and then they go after others and actually do cause physical harm.
It's interesting because like this person didn't cause physical harm, but in Mania last year, I questioned this woman so much about just her faith, but it wasn't good faith. Like I wasn't doing it to be malicious by any sense. I was just really curious about what she thought. And she called me evil and manipulative, and she's like, "You
I've
got
been
that
called
from
a demon more than once. Yeah.
yeah." She's like, "You got that from your mom," and I didn't even tell her about my mom being manipulative, but I'm like, interesting conclusion you made there, which is actually right. But I've been called evil by three people, well, and one indirectly, but it's really interesting
Please
with
do
when
not take that to heart.
no, I can't.
Curiosity, I
Go
want to say
ahead.
this, curiosity can be seen as being manipulative. When you are so curious, you're able to find the facets of people that they try to keep hidden, locked away, and secure. You can move those facets by asking them simple questions. And so your curiosity, and I'm saying this from what I'm assuming is a psychological perspective, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong. That is not you trying to be manipulative. That's trying to understand someone, and then you say, "Hey, do you see it this way or that way?" And they say, "Wait a minute, you're being manipulative. You're being evil."
Well, it
I
just
don't think
goes out
that's
of
what it
their
is. I think it's
yeah.
your curiosity.
But the other ones are kind of more like I'm not the good person in this story, and I don't mind sharing them. But it's one of those things where people just if they get out of their comfort zone, like it and claiming that something's evil, it's like rooted into their nervous system deep down. That I don't believe we should call people evil. I really don't because it gives the person more power that's receiving it than and it takes away from the person giving it. And like I said, I can get into it, but we have to be super careful. Like we can be wrong or bad, but not evil, and I think there's
Have you
implications.
you heard of all or nothing statements and why they should be avoided?
Why is that, or what's that, and why is that?
Okay, so if I say, so you're drinking water right now, I say, "Hey, drinking water is always good for your health." So let's say you're old, like you've had so much water you can't have any more, and then you keep drinking water because it's always healthy, even if
Mm-hmm.
you had too much to drink. And then, let's say you explode, hypothetically. that's part of always, but that's not good. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
if I say, then we say, oh yeah, exploding is never good. So let's say I have a horrible tumor in my leg, and if I don't get rid of it somehow, it's gonna go to my heart and it's gonna end me. So I take a knife, it's poke my leg and it explodes. Well, then exploding is never good. No, it would be good in that situation. You see what I'm saying? So that's why
Yeah.
we need to avoid all or nothing, always or never. And here's the thing: when people say evil, it's like saying never. It's like saying one of these really intense words, just to completely assign all. There's no nuance in it. You know what I'm saying? So when someone says that someone's holy or good and things like that, again, it's taking out a lot of nuance so that people don't think critically of things. That's what how
Yeah.
I see it.
It's yeah, I think it's there's like a lack of understanding if people call someone evil. It's I think it's just rooted into us like deeply that term that like uh, uh, it's like almost well spiritually in a case being influenced in such a way if I get into that like I'm agnostic but I lean spiritually for reasons I can get into but um I think we ought to be careful calling people that like they can be bad and wrong but
Well,
we ought to
I'll
be
say this too. Like it's a very powerful thing to say, but I will say that I guess I'm trying to think of something that's a good constant example. I'll say that hydrogen is always one atom. Okay, that's fair, right? It's really scientifically rooted.
mm-hmm.
That's why we have H2. So technically it's bonded to oxygen, but these two are separate, and oxygen is the O1. Anyway, but we can say that hydrogen is always one atom, and that's usually very fair.
Yeah.
With that said, we can make an always statement there. And this is where I say, or I can say that something like charity is usually beneficial, or things like that, or kindness is usually helpful. But I will say there are certain things that are evil. And I'm part of that why I think of evil is I think, and actually, what? Anton Salazar LeVay said this. I'm going to quote this. He said, the only sin is stupidity. I think he had something in that. So sin being evil, wrong. And so you know what? Yes, it is evil to be ignorant because here's the thing. People keep saying, "Oh, I didn't know better. I didn't know better." Well, when you continue not to know better, how can you do better? Because you don't know.
Well,
See? So I do think there's something about that tends to be evil. I will
maybe.
feign ignorance sometimes. Sometimes people will say, "Oh, I don't like that guy." Point at some black guy, and they'll say, "I don't like that guy over there." And I'll say, "Well, why not?" And they'll say, "Well, look at him." I'll be like, "Well, he's pretty tall. That doesn't mean he's a bad guy." Like, when they're applying things. So I'll feign ignorance, but that's because I do know what they're trying to do, and that'll
Yeah.
frustrate them. But no, that's actually me showing my knowledge, though. You
I
know what
think
I'm saying?
yeah, I think it gets difficult when people are ignorant like willfully or like just because they just don't know better, right? Like it's there's a famous
Well, think of
TikToker.
people pouring in emotion rather than logic, or they're not trying to be empathetic, right? So
Right.
that has hate. It's all focused on them,
Well, I
right?
would say there's this famous TikTok I went on when I was in Mania, and I was talking about Daryl Davis and talking about how we should essentially not like hate on a group of people. And this TikToker does a really good job at articulating his voice. And I would say he's right, like with the things he's saying, but like how we should approach things. We should be more careful. And where was I gonna go with this? Um, with like the what the fuck was I gonna say about this? Um,
You're talking about Davis. You something about mania,
right. Um, sorry,
and then
just
I
give me a
was
second.
talking about all or nothing statements. And I will say that things are often, or I
Oh yeah,
feel
yeah,
that
yeah.
ignorance. Yeah.
Sorry. So he makes a claim that all MAGA Republicans are Nazis, and we should be careful about labeling them that way because um they don't think that they're just not intelligent enough to understand like the similarities between Nazi Germany and what's going on today in America. We should be careful to call people that because they can take that in a negative way and be even more defensive or reactive.
People will double down. Yeah. So I guess that's really interesting for me. And I've seen that. Like I said, I try not to go one way or another, but then I would ask. I guess I'll ask you if someone was going to give, say, oh yeah, they're messed up. The Republicans, they're like the party of Germany during 1940. I would ask them. So do you think that I belong to the party of Germany in 1940? Because I said that I was Republican at one point. And I actually still I like the idea of a republic. I don't think it's a bad thing. But again, let's think about a republic in this way. The USSR, the Soviet Union, was the Union of Soviet Republics. So
Hmm.
you could be a Russian Republican who says we should have communism and give all of our work to the people, and we should never have capitalism because that's how our republic should function for the people. All right, so is that person like Germans? Interestingly enough, the USSR was the main enemy of Germany during World War II, and they conquered, they destroyed, they wiped out Germany, and they got to Berlin first. So are they the
Okay.
same? I don't think so. But they a lot in some way you could say they're Republican.
Yeah,
So
it's
that
interesting.
equivalence is that fair if we work off of that logic? And again, we could leave the history aside, but again, I'll ask you: do you think that I am the same way because I once associated with the Republican
Oh
Party?
no, definitely not. I mean, and obviously you've come a long ways to just like reflect and like understand like that's not who you represent anymore, like what you represent, like the values and whatever it's all about nowadays. Like that tells me a lot more than if you were just to come up and be like, yeah, I'm a MAGA Republican, and I'd have questions for you still, but like even then I would still be curious and have a dialogue with that person.
Well, and again, I would say for MAGA, a lot of people forget, and it's become part of a dialectic. Unfortunately, it's not as literal as it could be. In a storybook, you could make it work really well. So make America great again. And again, this is actually an interesting thing that, I'll just say fascism does, is it makes up a story, right? And you're supposed to follow the story. And usually in the story, everything was great and you got to make it great again, right? Or you got to go back to it. You know what Reich actually means?
What's
In
that?
German, it means age. So the idea for the Germans was that there was the age of Rome, which Pax Romana, which was the first great age. Then we had the Renaissance, which was the second great age, right? The second Reich. And so when the Germans rose to power, in like 1920, 1930, or the party specifically, they said, hey, we're going to have a third great age. So
Interesting.
now when
So yeah, go
America,
my
hear
bad.
me out, when America is going to have another great American age, do you see why there could be a bit of an issue with that?
Right, and pointing that out is interesting because like I didn't know the first two Reichs were not like technically their like German uh,
No, they are because
influences. Oh, they
Rome
are.
conquered Gaul, which was Germania, right? So during that time, that was Rome was technically German, but it came out of Italy, right? So
Oh,
a very long history. And then in
okay.
the Renaissance, a lot of great Renaissance thinkers actually were German.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm learning. This is
yes,
interesting. Okay. Yeah,
but it
yeah.
wasn't during the establishment of Germany. And the Weimar Republic was what was able to survive of what we call now Germany after World War One,
Right.
right? But it had to split off Austria. Anyway, so Germany did, it was in Rome, it was in the European Renaissance. And then they wanted it. See, that's why it's kind of ironic to call it the Third Reich because it was not a great age. It was abysmal, and
Yeah.
they wanted it to be another great age like Pax Romana or the European Renaissance.
Okay. Interesting. And then do you think there is so people have these ideas similar to German thinkers back then, and they bring that back to America for, you know, like when was
Oh, are you
America
talking
great?
about Paperclip?
Paperclip? I don't know what that is.
Okay, Operation Paperclip was after the war. The U.S. didn't want to fall behind on rocket technology and things like that, so
Okay.
they brought prominent Germans back to the U.S. in what they called Operation Paperclip. And then it's like attaching something to a document. So a lot of these German scientists would come back to America for that. But also the Russians were doing it as well. They would take German scientists and they'd be like, okay, you work for us now. The difference is Germans got into the CIA and they said, hey, we should conduct our government and our society this way. The Russians would hear that and they'd be like, I don't know, I don't like you that much. They had some real disagreements with the Germans. But the Americans, they were a little bit more open minded. And so some of them had more free reign after Operation Paperclip.
Meaning like they've
Was that what you're
influenced.
referring to?
I don't know. I don't know, but I was
But
more
yeah,
going to be.
the
I was
Germans
more.
did come back to the U.S., and that was part of that program.
Yeah, I was more curious, like what you had to say about that, because like, do you think it's like we're influenced by German thinking in a sense, like, or like the with when it comes to MAGA?
Have you looked at the demographics of the U.S.? Like
I
especially early
have
demographics. But if you go
not.
by European demographics, it is really interesting. And of course, there's we have African demographics and we have Asian demographics. But when you look at European demographics along the coastlines, we have a lot of I guess and it's interesting when people talk about the heartland too. So we have, and I'm not trying to tie this down to race according to demographics, but it's interesting how much culture would have come with this race. We have a lot of Anglicans. We got a lot of British people of British descent on like in New York on the on the excuse me, on the East Coast and on the West Coast, we also have a lot of people of British descent. Of course, we have many different demographics included. I myself am actually Norse
Oh, nice.
by ancestry, and then one of the reasons why the Elder Futhark's cool to me. However, during in the heartland, the real Americans, the farmers, a lot of those Europeans are of German descent,
Hmm.
and it's massive throughout the U.S. It's just like a thin line of Anglicans of like the British on the coasts, and then in the middle you have just a huge swath of Germans and not much else. There's like little patches of French, but most French is up in Canada by Quebec.
Right.
But there's some spots here and there like Louisiana in the U.S. Anyway, with that said, my little theory is that when you're welcoming in Germans from the the old world, the old continent, they might be welcomed more into the heartland of the U.S.
And yeah, interesting. I'm actually part German and part Polish. I come from the Midwest.
Yeah, yeah, and that tracks. Yeah, right in the Midwest too. So
Yep.
that's kind of part of what I get at with this is like how demographics are important. And I'm not condemning you one way or another, but I'm
Right.
saying when they're welcomed back, yes, that culture or cultural implications through that could be more likely. And I guess with the U.S., I would think so. Germany was really obviously irresponsible when they did what they did and they made their goofy mythology, but they expanded out from Germany in the center of Europe and the idea is they would conquer areas and then those areas would serve Germany. Basically, it was a lot like Rome. You know, you hear all roads lead back to Rome. There's truth to that, but Rome expanded out militaristically and then would take the resources from the areas they conquered and it would all go back to the city of Rome.
Oh,
Now, the Germans were trying to do the same thing. Now let's look at the model of the U.S. Do we in the U.S. build a lot of roads in here? Do we focus on sustainable agriculture? Do we make sure that our environments are good, our farms? No, it seems like we pollute a lot. We cut down our forests. Where do we get our oil from in the U.S.? Well, we get some of it from Texas. We also get it from other places in the world.
hmm,
So the U.S. has to expand out and take resources from other parts of the world. We're not really focused on trying to have sustainable resources in the U.S., despite what we say. So yes, unfortunately, with this expansion, then and another thing too was with Germany, the idea was that other places were impure and they didn't have a right to their own lands, but the Germans had a right to their resources to enrich, like Berlin in Germany,
yeah.
for example, was kind of the idea. Do you ever notice how Americans will talk about the oil in the Middle East? They'll say, "Oh, well, they have all that oil, but they're backwards and they don't even have a right to that oil. We need to
Yeah.
power our big old, Ford F-250s, and they don't even do construction job or anything. They just
Right.
want to drive to the nightclub in that big old truck." So, yes, there are definitely similarities in attitudes, and it's interesting looking at the demographics and is
Yes.
in the central U.S. with people who have the Europeans having that ancestry.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you breaking it down that way, because like, I mean, when people say or this person in general that I referred to on TikTok said that they're basically Nazis. Like it's understandable, but especially more hearing about like your explanation. But like, at the same time, we should be very careful calling people that word because people don't understand how they can contribute to that in the first place. You
Well,
know
that's a really weird term. Do you know what that actually means? Why they called themselves that?
why?
Okay, so socialism was all the rage, but the National Socialists, they were actually against the socialists. They said these guys they're full of nonsense. They're bad people. We don't want to be like the socialists. We're national socialists. So the socialists, like in Russia, for example, they were making the USSR, right, and so Germany was against them.
Yeah,
So there were actually social, like regular, plain Jane socialists in Germany that these national socialists hated. So they said, no, 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 we're not. We're nationalists. So we're focused on Germany. We don't want to unify so much with Austria. We want to, like, if we're going to have Austria, we're going to conquer it. And so we're national socialists. And here's the thing: as they gained power, they would say all the wonderful things like we're going to give everyone all the things they need, which is kind of like a socialist point. But the National Socialists, they would say, well, give Jewish Germans what they need. Well, they're not real Germans. It's an interesting thing, right? So, MAGA is going to make America great for everybody. Well, the Mexican Americans, well, are they real Americans? Yes, they are. But the implication is, no, we're not going to give them what they need because they're not real Americans. So, like how the National Socialists were rising to power in Germany, they said, well, the Romani Germans, are they really real Germans? Yes, they are,
interesting.
but the implication is that no, we're not going to actually be socialists and supply them as well.
Yeah, which is it's so interesting because like we like everyone's like some sort of like immigrant on in America except like well not not like the Native Americans of course, but it's
Well, that's
interesting
actually
we have that.
interesting because Native Americans would migrate as well, but it was a lot more, I mean, chill for the lack of a better word. They would have conflicts, but they didn't have that many. But that might just be a rise of population and for people to seek resources and stuff, why
Mm,
things started to ramp up. But yes, anyway, so I'm saying there are clear patterns in that form of thinking
yeah,
between them and the National Socialist Party of Germany during the 1940s. My thing is, and then they'll say, "Oh, we just want to help out Germans." They're full of shit because then they say, "Oh, this person isn't a real German," on and on and on.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I don't buy obviously that, but then now when we say Republicans are like this, Republicans, they are using similar playbooks, but what they're doing is a form of tribalism. And
yeah.
Democrats will do this form of tribalism as well, which is why I'm worried. And it's not just Democrats; it's like it could be I'm trying to think like a libertarian. Will do this form of tribalism. Libertarians tend to think that they're smarter than everyone else. I love libertarians. I don't support their policy, but they're really interesting. You know what libertarianism is and what they support?
I don't. It's like somewhere in the center, but not really in the center, right?
It's center right usually, but
Yeah,
sometimes you can have a very far right libertarian where anyway, libertarians believe that the government should not have any regulation or control over business, and people say, well, wouldn't business be corrupt? And then so we should have the control of the business. And then the libertarian will argue, well, no, to have good business, then you need to have good business practice. So of course the free market is going to regulate itself and everything will be fine. Get rid of all the governments and let's just have every form of control be a corporation. This is actually what they think. But then they think, oh well, the corporations would eventually become like nations, right? And they would make their rules and have their conflicts. And so yeah, they're some people will say that they're like they're completely moralist. What a lot of libertarians are is they are so concerned about restrictions. They feel like they're being oppressed, so they want to be able to produce money and have business, so that they can, I guess, they want to be able to govern themselves, right?
mm,
The issue is when you're governing yourself, then you can break a lot of laws that would be in a nation that had otherwise had a government. You know what I'm saying? And
interesting.
so,
So would like this like
yeah,
say if this person became super wealthy and influential. Whoa, that word. Um, like would they like essentially have control over whoever's like in their business, or like how does this work with?
Yeah. And here's the thing. So, and then somebody, they would argue, though, that because of this libertarian system, this person might be not treated well at their job. Well, you could quit and you could even start your own business. And so, in that way, you would have freedom and no government would force you to stay in that job.
So like they're like
Um,
capital, like ultra capitalism, or like
yeah,
capitalism,
that's what
right?
a lot of libertarians are. Or I guess that's, I'm trying to think, is uh, anarcho-capitalists. Yeah, they tend to follow the libertarian model. So that the anarcho meaning, hey, we're going to get rid of this government. There's not going to be any rules. But yeah, libertarians tend to follow that. I disagree
That's
with them,
interesting.
but I do sometimes think that they want the best. But I sometimes, and I want to be fair to them, I feel like they've attended a lot of expensive parties, hit a couple of bumps of white powder, and they're like, I know what I need to do. You know, you might be able to relate to it from saying you've had experiences with me. But I
I
do think
think
that a lot of libertarians might be following that pattern of thinking, like, "Oh, this is easy, no rules, but because I'm a good person, it's just going to work out." you know?
it's interesting. I think I might have talked with a person who was libertarian potentially. I don't know. It's making an assumption, which I know isn't good. But they talked about how me owning an Apple iPhone is bad because it comes from child labor, like slave labor, essentially from a different country.
They all do. I'm
And
sorry.
and it's like
It's horrible. Yeah, Apple
but
and
like
Android, they both come from the same manufacturers.
but like the interesting thing is like he's like you should spend your time like building your own phone and building your own stuff, and I'm living off the grid right now with a community that lives by ourselves, and I was like really interesting. I'm like, do you think everyone has this capability of having the luxury of going online and studying how to build a phone and getting the rare earth materials to put it together to build your own phone, because it's apparently unethical to buy an iPhone or whatever device? And it's like, I can't control that, and I could, well, I could, but I potentially could spend more time doing that. But I think it's more better if I focus my effort talking to people on this platform, rather than or doing something else with my life, rather than doing my like building my own stuff from scratch. I just don't find I didn't find that argument compelling.
Well, your goal is to have an effect on the world, but your independence is, I guess that's the thing. So your independence and your contribution to these systems you may otherwise disagree with is you would rather change the system than check out of it. Is that correct?
I think we can definitely pick out good things and bad things, and build upon it and become better.
Right. So that goes back to my question. Would you rather change the system than leave the system just because it's unethical?
Yes, I think
Okay, and
some
I
people
think that's
don't have
fair.
some people
I
don't have the
tend to
luxury
agree.
of leaving a system. Like imagine getting rid of Roe versus Wade, and then you're in Texas and you get raped, and
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
and you can't and if you leave your state and the state finds out that you get an abortion, then you're fucked. And it's just like, at that point, that women don't have the same rights in different states, and that's very concerning. Um, and I think people don't have that luxury to just go wherever they need to get that. And that's just one example, right? This
Maybe
can
you could
happen.
move states, but yeah, it's
Maybe,
that's
but
a whole hoopla.
even
That's
then,
so dumb.
so like there's a lot of different examples we can get into with this, and I think change has to happen where, you know, where if people are living in this country together, change has to happen together. Um, and I think that's one example of it not being effectively beneficial for the population.
I guess I was going to talk to you about this. Is going to sound strange at first, but have you heard of Virgil from Devil May Cry and why he's an interesting figure?
I haven't.
Okay, so Dante in the Devil May Cry video game, and I promise this applies. Dante, he wants to be strong, but just strong enough that he can defeat evil, right? And so eventually he comes up against Virgil, who ends up being the main enemy of the game. But Virgil is not a demon. He's not from hell, but he serves, well, he has a relationship with hell, and he's the enemy. And Virgil explains to Dante, Dante says, well, I'm going to defeat you. And Virgil's kind of slapping Dante around, and he explains to Dante, how are you going to do anything? You're serving evil because you're not powerful enough to actually affect evil. So Virgil said, I joined evil, but you need to realize because I have this power, evil is subject to me. All the forces of hell are subject to Virgil.
That's interesting.
And so the Virgil principle, as I understand it, and this is kind of a thing I have in my head, is in order to affect the world, you need power. right?
You're
And
getting me
so it's
somewhere.
ethical to accrue. It's ethical to accrue power. And some billionaires and stuff, they call this effective altruism. They say, hey, I could give $1 million to charity right now, or I could invest $1 million into making a farm and then feeding people later in the future. Unfortunately, what this ends up doing is it makes up usually a lot of hedge funds and things like that instead
Right.
of farms or feeding anyone. But they say, hey, I could help people in the future because it's more effective altruism than feeding everyone right now. So a lot of them they're trying to avoid actually doing something right now. But Virgil, I guess, going back to him and his idea of power, I think about this and I think of Machiavelli in a similar way. But with Virgil, my criticism for him is right. You feel like you're controlling the world with power. You think that you're in control. You're not, Virgil, because power is in control of you. You
Hmm.
always have to do something to have power. And if something could take away from that power, you cannot consider it. So if you could be happy, but it would reduce your power, you will never be happy because you will
Interesting.
do what you can to be powerful. You see what I mean?
Interesting.
So
Yeah,
power
yeah.
doesn't serve Virgil. He's serving power in whatever form it may come in. So he's not
Interesting.
free.
That's interesting that you say all that stuff because I think about this and like in a sense we should understand that we can become a monster and like how do we understand that in the first place, right? But it's just like what can I do to be unproductive to other people, and sometimes that isn't always found out until it happens, right? Um, but I think it's one of those things where we shouldn't repeat mistakes. Like we should learn from our mistakes and make them often, and don't make them dramatic or bad, like in a greater sense. Um, but it's
Well,
interesting
here's the
when you
fun thing.
say
If you're ever
what do you
having
say?
a bad day, oh, I'm sorry, but yeah, if you're ever having a bad day, you could say, we have to make mistakes to learn. So I must be really, really intelligent today because I'm making so many mistakes.
I'm
You
making so many
know,
mistakes. I feel like shit.
you
And
know,
it's
it's dishonest, but it's like, whatever. I'm
well,
trying to
it's
get.
interesting, right? It's interesting.
But yeah,
Yeah,
people will say certain things that are kind of cliche, like, "Oh, you can learn from your mistakes," and don't feel so bad. Another one that I saw a little bit along those lines I thought was so fun was somebody said, "Yeah, I applied for a job and they realized that I had no experience and no certification, and I wanted a lot of pay." The boss asked me, "Well, why would I give you this job? You're not even certified, and you're asking for a lot of money." Well, I explained to him, well, yeah, so it's going to be much harder for me than it would be for someone who's qualified, so I should be paid more.
it's been much harder. That's great. Nice,
But
nice.
yeah, so we can. And that's what I'm saying is like, too. You can be stupid. You can be intelligent enough to the point where you can make like superficial or like simulated stupidity. I love that. I think that's so fun.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. Because I don't claim to be like it's weird. It's been weird over the past couple months being on here, and just what people have been telling me. But like I don't claim to be really intelligent, but I can navigate conversations in a way that people open up and feel safe like talking to me. So I think there's some strength there. Um, but it's really interesting over the past like however many months I've been doing this, just hearing different people's like reactions to it. But yeah, I think I'm probably going to get off for now. It's 5:45, and I have to
Okay,
eat dinner here soon. But you're more than
please
welcome to
do.
come. You're more than welcome to come on
I, I
again
want
in
to
the
make one more
future.
point. It'll be less than
Yeah,
2 minutes. This is
yeah.
the
Go
thing
ahead.
with power, though.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think Dante was correct in the video game, but what you have to do is you have to accrue enough power so that you can do what you want. But if you become a subject of power, then you really don't have as much power as you do. That power itself has power over you.
Yeah.
Machiavelli, I'm sorry to bring this up, I'm trying to be quick.
No, no, no.
Machiavelli
You're
said,
good.
be cruel to people because when they're afraid, then they'll serve you, right? And they won't betray you. If they love you, they might be pretending and stab you in the back. Friedrich II, he criticized that and said, if people really love you, they're not going to stab you in the back. And so Friedrich, he understood that he didn't just want power for power's sake. He wanted power for a goal, and so that was for him, for people to love him, and for him to be just. He was the emperor of Prussia. um, Machiavelli was the basically the leader of the city state of Naples, which changed rulership like three different times, but he survived. Anyway, point being, if you go by Friedrich II's model, you realize that it's important to gain power to the point where you can give it away and you can spend it on things. But if you hoard power,
Yes,
you are ruled by that power.
yes. I love that. I love that. I really
And
do
that's the
think
thing.
that's
Look at our
important.
current world leaders, though. Look at our current
Uh,
world leaders. Are they using their power and spending it as something that they should use, or are they just doing what they can to accrue power and wealth?
exactly. No, I think that's very important, and it goes back to the idea of like, would you rather be loved or rather be feared? And I think that's an interesting question to think about. But I would say obviously for me, love, because I think we need more of it. Like the Beatles weren't wrong when they said all you need is love, right? It's very hippie, but I think there's like seeing people as humans and interacting with them in such a way where we can lean in with curiosity and understand each other in a sense to what we're doing on this earth. I think is critical, and it's so fascinating talking with so many people on here, and I appreciate you for coming up and just
So long as that love
sharing.
is functional, I agree. Yeah. But yeah, get something to eat. Hopefully, you have a good meal. I added you. If you ever wanted
Yes,
to talk again, I'm willing to talk.
definitely, man. You're more than happy. You're more than what's this damn words I'm gonna say? You're more than welcome to come back up.
Welcome, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. You're more than welcome to come back up in the future. But yeah, it's been great talking with you, man. I appreciate you.
Okay, take care, Brady.
Yep. Take care. Bye. All right. Cool. All right, guys. We're gonna end it, and I'll see you sometime soon. Goodbye.